What's up, geeks? So I finally have hit the mother lode on this 5G business, and now I understand why there's so many bots flooding the internet with just absolute bullshit, nonsense, disinformation, and ridiculousness. They do not want people looking into and learning about the health effects of microwave and millimeter waves, because a lot of this is, I mean, now it's come out because it's public knowledge through the academic research and studies that have been done, but a lot of these effects were formerly classified as military secrets. Um, and man, so I posted some links in the description to where you can download and find some of these documents that I recently found this between last show. So a couple people watching the last show sent me some links, and I found this stuff. So I'm just gonna break this down for people and talk about some of this. This one's a translated Russian from Russian, I believe. This was I'm not. I didn't read this one yet. This one's translations. Yeah, translations on USSR Science and Technology, Biomedical Sciences, effects of non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation by the U.S. Joint Publications Research Services. So this one came from a lot of the Russian research into this technology going back to the 70s, and I have another one from the 70s as well, with some of the more classified stuff in it. But there's another one that's really interesting I wanted to show. And this was I think it's the ICC report, I believe. Let me just find this. Where's the original article? I had it open here. Sorry, I got a bunch of shit open here. But this one's the icnirp.org. This is a German company. They're an international commission on non-ionizing radiation protection, but their laboratories and their facilities are out of Germany, even though it's an international team and that have collaborated on this. And this is like a gold mine. This is literally a jackpot of the information, and not on of information on a lot of stuff. It gives you references to a lot of the studies that have been done, and you can check these. But you can basically learn all the bad frequencies and the power levels and the wave architecture, the signal and the processing and the protocols for how to create and generate those effects. And it also learned a lot about why this is like real different from 5G, according to the conclusions in this study. Although I'm inherent to think that they might have some bias in their conclusions, just because we're a company hired by the cell phone companies to basically quell the fears of the public that cell phones had could have bad effects on the human body. So it's kind of like the industry funded this study and this report, but it's also should be held with some skepticism. So I think it would be good to I want to get a 5G tower, or find one of these devices and set up some probes and oscilloscope and some test equipment, so we can get amplitudes and power levels to see if they are what they say they are, because there's just a whole level of mistrust and everything that's going on here. So it'd be good to verify their conclusions and the thing in the. But basically, what the conclusions of this report say is that that the people who developed 5G knew and understood a lot about these microwave and millimeter frequencies and their the different health effects that they could have, and the frequencies, the power levels, and the protocols that they picked for the 5G technology were very carefully and wisely chosen by well-informed engineers and physicists that specifically they built this stuff so that it wouldn't be super dangerous and be doing all this stuff. But on the other hand, I do want to talk about, so this is the this is the 5G watchdog report. This is the Guardian article. So here it is. You can go check that out. But 5G can spy on you. Critic sensationally claims the tech will watch you at home. That basically they can geolocate and triangulate your position in your home with or without. I think this is without the smart dust. This is just based on EMF feedback, but with the other technologies that they have, smart dust and also RFID chips. Kind of like, as I was explaining in the last video, kind of like the tags that they put on merchandise in stores that go off when you come near the detectors at the door. When you walk out the door, they're basically these big magnetic gates, and they oscillate at a certain frequency, which powers up that antenna receiver and powers a little RFID transponder in the chip, and that sends out a signal, which is then picked up by another sensor inside the stalls at the store, and that sends off the alarm that oh, and then RFID, a theft prevention tag is attached to that merchandise, and that's how that works. And that's why you hear the stories of the people lining the shopping bags with tinfoil, and that blocks enough of the signal to prevent the tags from going off, and that's how one way to get around that technology. So there's always going to be hackers and people that understand the technology and how to hack it and how to get around it. That's inherent with every new technology that comes out, and that's kind of what us geeks are doing. And I know the hacker community is a out there, and some of them share my videos and some of the research that we do here. So again, this is cool stuff that we're learning, but it's very definitely apparent, more obvious than ever should be, that there's a massive disinformation campaign and effort to really put out a lot of bullshit on 5G and put out all these fake conspiracies and troll the real information, just to kind of suppress this stuff, because this is classified for a reason, man. So anyways, this ICNIRP, ICNIRP, they wrote a report in 1998 on frequencies, and then they updated it, and this is the 2021. I have these links in the description. The 2020 report includes more of the frequency band, including the 5G spectrum and some of those frequencies. Now, what's really cool is that this is awesome. Just to be aware of this information and some of these adverse health effects and stuff, so that we can be knowledgeable and safer about the experiments that we're conducting. Because it's really interesting that the one experiment that we wanted to try for anti-gravity, we've been trying a bunch of anti-gravity experiments just to try to get a lab off the ground with some kind of startup to do some of the more advanced experiments I want to eventually get up to. But we were trying to replicate the just picked out a couple of, we have a whole list on the Hover Brothers website. There's a link to that in the theory page. I have a whole bunch of, we're going to move this over to by the way, we're going to move this over to the Falcon Space program page and really focus on just doing this all under Falcon Space instead of having the two companies, and just kind of start fresh with Falcon Space program. But what we're going to do is basically we want to make a database too, because there's all kinds of stuff that links that keep disappearing, and we downloaded the stuff luckily so that we have copies of it, but there's a lot of stuff that's disappeared and been taken down, and we want to kind of create a central database for all those materials and all those files on the new Falcon Space program website. And that's kind of going to be an effort to cross-link and reference a lot of the science, because we're seeing a lot of different discoveries being made on opposite ends of on a bunch of different areas of physics, where new physics is starting to potentially emerge, and we want to be able to trace out all those connections between phenomenon inside these scientific documents and all this stuff to basically create a better map of where more interesting area, what like basically it's a map to figure out what's the disinformation, what's the bad ideas, and what's the real shit, and separate this all out and sort it all out and figure it out like hard. And and we're going to be doing a lot of experiments too, just to check and verify this. But what was awesome is we picked the Alzofon experiment, and there's a 1994 replication that was done by David Prushi, and but we think this one's is a great place to start because it talks about some of the basic ideas in the physics that Boeing Aerospace was legitimately considering back in the 1980s when they funded this, and they funded the research into this. So it goes to show against the theory that the government or these aerospace companies have figured this out a long time ago and they're keeping it secret. Maybe this is part of the fake disinformation that they've put out to hide all the real secret space program that's existed since 1947 when that thing fell in the middle of Roswell, New Mexico, or whatever the people are saying and believing. But we want real disclosure. We want real science and real information, and that's kind of like we're trying to sort out the bullshit from what's legitimate, what's tangible, and what we can touch. So we go through these lists of all these experiments, doing the easiest, most simplest ones to fund and replicate first. We'll eventually get up to the ones that we want to do, the more advanced stuff, and talk about some of these other interesting phenomenon and effects. I noticed Jeremiah was in the chat, and wanted to give him a shout out. He was my guest on the last episode that we did. You can check out his channel by clicking on join the technicians. I think he's commenting under that's Jeremiah's channel right there. But that's the dude that was on last week that was teaching me all about Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower and some of these currents. And I talked to another guy today who was telling me about Birkeland currents and some of this research, basically how to tap into these Birkeland currents from the sun, and it's a massive source of energy that we could but hopefully they don't get overcharged, because these plasma discharges, if we align them with the earth and stuff, if there's ever a big crazy solar storm where it released a large current through that plasma stream, it could cause some problems. But other than that, I think it's an interesting idea, interesting area of research. Why do I got a private number calling me? Hello? Who's this? Oh, hey. I'm on Skype, and I can't. I'm on Minds too. I don't know if you can get on there. Okay, so you subscribe to me. I gotta subscribe to you now. Oh, oh, we have to set that up. All right. Oops. Well, I wish we figured this out before I started the stream, but if you want to call me on Skype, you can do that. I don't know if you still use Skype, but I took Zoom off my computer because I had heard from some IT friends of mine that it was basically communist Chinese spyware, and it was slowing down my computer quite a bit. I noticed when I uninstalled it, it was suddenly running much smoother and faster. But yeah, we should get Danny to call in on Skype, talk about some stuff. But Danny's not really into all the technology and the science, though. That's kind of what I was I wanted to focus on and talk about tonight. But we were also talking about some of the Royal Rife technology. It's RIFE. Let me see if I can type that in. Royal Rife. Royal Rife. Yeah, this guy is basically some suppressed and research, and that there's a recurrence of it now in the medical field, which is getting its way into journals where people are figuring out how to basically use these microwave and millimeter frequencies, and also what are called super heterodyne receivers, to to use this technology for good, basically, instead of evil, where we're talking about all the negative and bad frequencies and the bad effects that this stuff can have. There's people out there also trying to figure out how to harness it for good, because these magnetic fields and these altering magnetic fields, if you read through these reports and look at this in the health effects section, you'll see that it does have some effects on DNA, not DNA and protein protein folding and protein conformation, in the way that basically proteins and these magnetic fields and these altering magnetic fields. Okay, someone needs to shut off their look at this. Mute their mic or use headphones. Sorry.
We're going to have to reconnect here. I did not know you guys were going to call me in here. Let me put my headset on and get back via my laptop instead of my cell phone.
Okay.
Are we live yet, Jerry?
Yeah, you guys are live. I'm live right now, but anyways, you look at the health effects. It's all documented in here. So this is good information for you to know, Mark, and study this stuff, because we're going to be doing experiments with microwave radiation for the Alzofon experiment. We don't want to be we want to be avoiding those bad frequencies and power levels, and use safety protocols.
Yeah, it's very interesting that the experimentation that we're doing right now is actually very much connected to the 5G systems that everybody is talking about. I don't see any conspiracy as to it creating any sort of virus or causing any damage in humans. The only way it could possibly do anything would be to if you got the exact resonant frequency of a water molecule and shook it at that frequency, which is possible with these frequency ranges, then you could shake it apart into its base elements. But that happens naturally in other forms, such as electrolysis. So it wouldn't be the most dangerous thing in the world, and it all depends on energy output. Like if you're standing right in front of a 200-watt antenna that's blasting all this energy at you at exactly the right frequency, yes, it can kill you. But when you're standing on the street, they're not using those frequencies. They're using very different frequencies in order to communicate with your devices. I don't see any danger to it. To how it's being set up, but we do need right now, in order to continue this experiment, we need a data analyzer, an RF analyzer that goes up to at least 10 gigahertz, that gives us in-depth information as to what's exactly going on in these gigahertz range, to make sure that we're putting out the correct signal for the sample. Current setup that we have right now has not shown any effect. Let's see if I can pull it up.
I wonder if you'd be able to do that with an SDR.
I don't know.
Our affiliate technician Wayne, who is not taking the measurements but does have some equipment which can generate the necessary microwave RF, has also been testing it, and he did get some very small results, but also you couldn't necessarily say they were conclusive as of yet. It's still significant. It's definitely better than nothing.
Yeah, what do you say? 0.3 grams on 0.2 grams on a 3-gram sample. So that's roughly 8% or 10% weight loss or something like that. And it happened every time he would power up the RF amplifier.
Exactly like the experiment stated that it should during the pulse, during the initial turn on.
Yes, exactly as the experiment stated. But again, that is a lot less weight loss than was predicted. Again, also his equipment is very how do you say?
Very analog. It's simple.
Very simple, very analog. I like that term.
He didn't take any measurements. He didn't tune it in any way. He just simply crammed some microwave energy through a magnetic field to a sample that was sitting in a not at all symmetrical magnetic field, and he actually got results. And I think that if that isn't promising to us, I mean, if that isn't at least something significant to look at, this guy just set some stuff up, basically rigged it what anybody could do with stuff they can find around their place in the matter of a day, using magnetron magnets and a high voltage source of some type. You could set this up and do it yourself, and if he's actually getting results, maybe the scale was affected by the EM fields. It could have been a false positive, but if it was even that fractional percentage of a gram, I would be extremely interested to recreate the experiment. And that's just a beginning.
So it talks about basically tuning into the frequency range of hearing and just going slightly above that to with a carrier frequency in the non-hearing range, and then
So basically what's happening is you're modulating the heat, the amount of energy output, just like an AM radio station, right? And you're pointing it at a target.
Yep.
It's really not all too difficult, is it?
No, we could definitely do this for. I mean, these machines look pretty primitive, and if they built this stuff back in the 20s, we could certainly do it. This was 100 years ago. Nearly
So
90 years ago.
Go out to your local Target, buy yourself a solid state microwave oven so that you can change the circuitry to be powered by DC. That allows you to control the signal. Then just simply amplitude modulate the power going into the magnetron and aim it at somebody with a linear directional antenna, like a Yagi antenna, and bam, there you go. You've got your synthetic telepathy device.
So another thing we got into, we shouldn't have hung up the stream last night, because I swear that extra half hour that we talked after the stream last night, we had some crazy stuff brought up. And Foxmoto 44, you could jump on. I can add you to this call if you want, if you're on Skype.
I've been seeing that guy on the chat the entire time, and I've been wondering what this character is about, because he's pretty much been there every single stream that I've been on. So I gotta know.
He's the buddy that came in last.
Oh, that's Foxmoto?
Yeah, that's him.
Oh, okay, that's why he's there every time. Yeah, that dude is awesome.
Yeah, he works at a lab doing some research on frequencies and electromagnetic stuff. So he's
an electrical engineer. That's pretty darn cool.
Yes, definitely.
And I appreciate as an electrical engineer being able to talk to him.
He brought up some really cool things last night. One of the things and I've heard, he's not the first person I've heard talk about this since. He's the first person I heard about it from, but ever since, in the last 3 days, I've heard 4 other people bring this up. But the megavitamin theory, this doctor, not Thomas Levy. I had the name of the doctor up here, not Francis Boyle, not Edward Boyle. Where the heck is his name? I had the name of it up here for a second. I can't find it now, but megavitamin theory. Frederick Klenner. That's the guy, Frederick Klenner.
Hey, okay, about the megavitamin theory. So a few nights ago, I felt some itchy throat. I had a dry cough. I was thinking, oh God, I hope I don't get sick. So I just dosed myself throughout the course of the evening with a huge amount of vitamin C. What would be considered a dangerous dose, and probably make most people either pee it out or have another result.
Yeah.
So as you know, your body handles any high excessive nutrients by purging, which happens either one of two ways. So anyways, I took that, woke up the next morning, had no symptoms whatsoever, and I don't know if I was getting sick or if maybe I just vaped too much. Either case, it was something kind of unusual. My girlfriend was doing the same thing. She's over it as well. It just kind of went away by the morning after. So maybe there is something to this vitamin theory. I don't know for sure. I'm not going to suggest it. I certainly wouldn't recommend people test it, but
right. That's
what I did, and it did seem to have an effect.
We can get YouTube's banning people for recommending treatments and other things. So you're not a doctor, you're giving medical advice.
It could be extremely dangerous. Think about if your immune system was out of balance.
It's right under here under pseudoscientific concepts. So just be aware. I
It
mean,
is. There's a lot of BS there, and if your body's not up to being able to handle a high amount of any particular vitamin or mineral, then you're going to have very adverse effects, and they could be extremely dangerous.
if you're end of life career alcoholic and your liver is completely cirrhosis and you're not able to process large doses of vitamins, we would not suggest you do that. Uh,
Or if you just
Jeremy,
really haven't been feeling good.
yeah, right. Anyway,
Jeremy, can you hear me?
yes.
We got you, Mark.
Um, okay, can you pull up my share screen right now? I want to show everyone some pictures of what we're
Oh yeah,
doing
yeah, yeah. I'll pull
with the
that up
current experiments.
right now. Let's get this bigger. And I don't want to show off everyone in my.
Yeah, by the way, Mark, yeah, you definitely need to pull these pictures up. They are amazing, excellent pictures. They were really exciting when I was looking at them, so definitely get those shared.
Okay, is it showing yet? You see
Yeah,
the
you can see
copper
the
and the
copper
iron,
coil, and you got these box beams.
and round beams. So we're basically trying to make the 3300 Gauss magnetic field that we needed in order to try this experiment. This is the rough setup of how we plan on doing it. And oops.
Move your
Uh,
viewing windows so your image, Jeremy, isn't blocking it.
Oh yeah, let me go over to the boom. Is that better?
Okay, so now you can see this is the final setup of the electromagnet. It went up to 4500 Gauss, and this is the setup with basically there's a weight up a force meter up here attached to these 2x4s that then goes to this lever. The sample's right over there. The RF is coming out over here. This power supply controls the magnetic field, which is read by this Gauss meter. And over on the side, it's out of the frame of view, is the controller for the RF. We tried this experiment in this setup. We did not see any results. We did see at some point convection from the lower electromagnet was creating a rise or a lowering in temperature because of the convection, the air currents. So I put this piece of cardboard in there to stop that. It's a very sensitive setup. You can sense cars driving by. It's that sensitive.
Which again, we
And
need to point out just how significant that accomplishment is, because being able to achieve that level of sensitivity does display that we're fully apt to take these types of measurements. We're skilled in the arts. We understand the errors, and we're ready to take proper data. So it needs to be pointed out again for people who are maybe just coming onto this that taking good data is difficult. I spent 8 years as a calibration technician in the industry, and I can tell you all about data. I taught industry in electromagnetics and a variety of other fields. So the fact that you're able to take those kinds of measurements, it definitely displays a knowledge and awareness of the possible ways errors can be introduced into the experiment.
yes, and well, another thing we were considering is whether or not to put a cone on the end of the output for the RF. This is what our guy Wayne in Canada is doing, and everyone should know this is a multi country effort over here. We have a team in Nam Tran. This guy is in Vietnam. He's also working on anti-gravity. Everybody's trying different methods. Right now, Wayne is doing also the Alzofon experiment, and yeah, he's getting some positive results. And if anyone's interested in joining this group, most of the action in Falcon Space and this entire project really takes place in a WhatsApp group. We're not going live every single time we 3D print another little thing like that. So if you really want to get involved, if you really want to try these experiments at home, I believe anti-gravity will ultimately be achievable for less than $1,000 if you know what you're doing.
If you really knew what you were doing, like that friggin' alien on the thing who goes to the Antarctic base and they catch him, like, he's building the UFO in the garage in secret, and jumping from body to body. right?
That's
So.
kind of what we are. Um, I
Yeah,
mean, in
because
all
this is the
honesty,
idea, is that if any one of us gets taken out, the idea stays going and keeps going and stays,
yeah,
effective. The
we
seed.
just need to keep the momentum going forward. We need to keep on innovating in this field. Ultimately, the goal over here is to prove that this technology is viable. I don't expect any test rig to really fly and take you anywhere. These are all proof of concepts. I don't think much of the equipment that we're even using for these experiments will be applicable to an entire spacecraft. Um, there's probably
Well,
different
I
ways
like
of doing
having
Mm,
things.
hopeful people. I'm less hopeful than you, but I like it's good having people like you on the team that are hopeful about everything. Because I'm like, this is just like we're just gonna go through all these experiments and
Well, I'll
really
tell you
beat
right
a
now,
dead
Jeremy, why
horse
we're
with.
hopeful. And there's a really straightforward reason for it. Because we understand that once we discover an anomaly, something that can be utilized, uh, taken advantage of, that if you can take advantage of a small effect and you understand what the factors are that control that effect, that amplifying it once you discover it is basically child's play. It's the matter of first discovering it and then making
Yes.
it 10,000 times stronger is nothing. So the whole thing here is we are hopeful because we know that once we discover something that's truly viable here, we can take it to the next level very easily by implementing the maximization of each particular parameter that controls the outcome of that system.
Someone's
Uh,
calling me on WhatsApp.
that's very well said, Jeremiah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're basically trying to prove that combustion can happen, and therefore, rockets are possible, or it's
Right,
the
it's
same
the
sort of
electrical
analogy.
equivalent of it. It's saying if we can make electric fields or magnetic fields or some other phenomena like that consistent enough where we can achieve this result where we either neutralize mass, produce propulsive force, generate some kind of kinetic energy, neutralize momentum, do anything that's basically outside of the current realm of physics, then we have a significant piece of information here to work with. And all we have to do is simply apply what we've learned from that experiment to the next one and enhance it and enhance it and enhance it until basically we do what JPL has always done and what every other research facility has always done. We optimize it until we have something that's tangible. If you believe the stories of, Otis T. Carr, then that's basically what they claimed to do. They had a group of some 30 to 50 members. I have no idea what the exact number is because it's not really publicly stated clearly, but it was a small group of people who were devoted to the project and apparently headed up by just a very small number of people. So they achieved what would be considered impossible, which is a craft that human beings can get into and move about. Now, I don't personally believe the story. I think it's hearsay, but I think it does speak to the potential of what can happen if people work together in unison to achieve a common goal.
And so about just back to and I think we're on to some of the right ideas here too, because we talked to a lot of really smart researchers in the into theoretical physics and experimental physics who are on like the cutting edge of all this sort of what's considered the fringe, but it's really like just the cutting edge of the field. And it's out kind of some of the stuff's kind of coming in from outside the boundaries. I feel, especially the stuff about, we had this talk about coherent perfect absorbers and anti-lasers, right? That got brought up
Right.
last
That was
night.
last. Right.
That was last night. I mean, not last night, but that
Two
was the
nights
night,
ago.
2 nights ago after the stream. We had talked about that, right? I started looking up all this stuff about anti-lasers, and I found about the Moss-Bauer effect, and basically it's this. This is what if you read all the latest stuff from my buddies at Peter Hagelstein at MIT, his latest theory on what happens to the high energy gamma rays from these cold fusion experiments is all this. It's basically the same exact shit. There's so much overlap right now going on with all that research and all the stuff that I did on cold fusion back in 2011.
Oh, it gets wild. It gets wild with the overlap because all these subjects seem to be related in some way or shape.
Right, and that's data that's really showing me that there's definitely something. We're not just stoned fucking seeing electrons moving. as someone said in the chat. There's
I'm actually
definitely,
impressed with the speed of this chat. Like right now, when I say something and you respond, and you say something and I respond, we're talking about milliseconds right now. I cannot believe how good the connection is,
yeah, it's pretty
audio
good.
wise.
That's
Yeah,
freaky.
Peter
It's you'd
Hagelstein. You read his recent stuff, the recent stuff that he's put out on cold fusion, and it's right in line with all this anti-laser, gamma ray. We were looking up gamma ray lasers, and they're also called grazers, right? But there's also a gravity laser. See, it's not to be called confused right here at the top, not to be confused with gravity laser, also sometimes called a
Yeah, the
gazer or
fact that a
grazer.
gravity laser is even in there as part of the subject matter is kind of wild, right?
I know, right? It's like,
Like,
dude.
what the heck is a gravity laser? I'm sure people are reading that like, what? What is a gravity laser? How do I get one of those? Can I buy it on eBay?
Oh yeah, and we're just the new experiments and the new theoretical models are turning the old models and the old models of physics completely on their heads. We're learning that matter is trapped light. That's all it is. Been saying this. It's from the beginning. That's why E equals mc squared. It's just going in a circle or in a box. It's just matter. It's just energy or light that's trapped in a certain
yeah.
space in a certain way.
I actually explained
Well,
that
it's
during
trapped for a
alien
time.
And the thing is that they learned that maybe there's no such thing as the electron, that it's just appears in the scheme of how everything works. There's something deeper going on with it, because this whole confinement thing. And Mike McCulloch posted about this again with his quantized inertia theory and the work that he's doing over in the UK. And there's amazing just seeing like this. There's so much overlap, and I'm trying to draw it all
Okay, so
together, and
hold on
that's
a
why I
second,
think.
Jeremy. So there's this device. I
Yep.
can't remember who made it or what it's called, but I bet that you know what I'm talking about when I describe it. So it is this device that is basically a rod of crystal material into which a high power laser is fired, and during the time that the laser is transitioning through this material, it has an electromagnet around it to create a very strong magnetic flux. And apparently, this material itself, because it slows down the photons moving through it as it gains a change in mass, loses external mass as a result and generates a force in one direction. I cannot remember exactly what it's called. It's a
Yeah, it's
crazy experiment.
perovskite, and
Okay, so you know exactly what I'm talking about then.
and I had the article up here. Just fucking, it's on one of my other.
Like, that's not very different from what we were just talking about the last transmission
No.
with these metamaterials and other materials that are basically perfect absorbers or perfect transmitters, things that can carry on those pieces of photon energy and compress them or slow them down, which create a change in the electromagnetic field density of the volumetric space in which those metamaterials exist. See, that's the part that I think people need to really look at. It's the fact that when light is traveling through these materials, bouncing back and forth between sides, normally it would travel at velocity c, but within these materials, because it's taking so many changes of angles and various other things, there are electromagnetic interactions which can take place, which are not normally part of the constant equations. So you have energy levels in terms of whether they're electromagnetically positive, or electrically negative, which are not zero, and this screws up the equations. It screws up the classic four Maxwellian equations, and it screws up the Heisenberg's modification of those things, and it brings you back into the original 20 plus Maxwellian equations, which talks about how changing the field energy of any three-dimensional space will actually change its ratiometric response to external electromagnetic fields. Okay, so that was a lot of words, and I'm sorry for that, but basically, yeah, when you pump a lot of photon energy into a material and it stays there for longer than it normally would, that material has properties that change,
Right.
in layman's terms.
And that change is demonstrated with gravity.
Well, it shows up as a change in its gravitational inertia or its gravitational mass.
Perovskite.
It really depends whether you consider gravity to actually be a fundamental force or a field effect, which in my case I consider it to be a field effect because I think there's more than sufficient evidence to support that claim. But even as a fundamental force, yes, it does show up as a change in a readable number that can be measured by any kind of mass measurement device like a scale.
Yeah, so on the
Um,
quantum
I,
level, perovskites look like just a lattice of octagons.
I like to look at gravity as a weakening in the ether field. The ether field is what sustains the electromagnetic particles that are bouncing against it. And as you have more and more particles in one space, then the ether, the energy that ultimately allows this energy to stay, this matter to exist,
I'm going to add
gets
Wayne to the call.
gets
Yeah,
weakened.
please do. Please do.
And that
This may be
weakening
one of our most useful and dangerous broadcasts that we have done yet.
Oh, yes.
that may be the case.
I mean, listen to what we're talking about. This is some pretty serious stuff right here.
Oh, yes.
I love it. I love every
Well, we
piece of
have
it.
to, man, because, like, we don't know if the internet's going to get shut down for 3 days. I'm just kidding.
Jeremy, what we need
That's
to
right.
do is figure out a way to keep on changing the screen over, because each of us can actually do what you're doing and show
I'm not
relevant
doing
information.
video,
Ah,
by
No,
the way.
but you could share a screen if we were doing minds.com.
If I was on my cell phone, I would show you guys some really awesome stuff. Actually, I guess I could share my screen technically, even via Skype, and show the intro to
Here,
that
I
video.
can-
If you're interested
I
in
can show
that.
the video. I have it right here. Jeremy, can
Oh,
you pull up
I
the
mean,
video?
how
I
come
took a
it's
cell phone
so
video.
hard to add people to this call,
I
man?
took a cell phone video. I can actually play it live via screen share, so that's something. Oh wait, I'm not sure if audio will come through though. Huh.
I have the screen share right here. Jeremy, can you pop up my screen?
Hey.
Jeremy, could you pull up
Wait.
my screen?
Wait, Wayne. Wait. I'm trying to add you to the call, man. Yes, I'm gonna add this other dude, Sky too. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna get. I'm trying to figure this out, dude. It's hard to. Crap.
Yeah, we got to go to minds.com, man.
It does
There he
save a
is.
lot of effort, that's for sure. Once you get set up on mine,
I
mean, just
can't even
exit
figure
that
out how to do it on mines, dude. Like
Talk
this.
to Andreas. He's on the chat, dude. He's on the WhatsApp,
I want.
and he'll tell you everything about it. Andreas somehow manages to pump out a video like once every 2 days. I have no idea how, but that dude's got it figured out. Definitely talk to him.
He joined. You joined him.
Jeremy, could you pull up my screen?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm trying to add this guy to the call. Yeah, I got your screen on there. Let me just see.
No, you got the minds.com thing right now.
I know it hasn't loaded yet, and this. Oh my god. And I don't want everybody, my whole contacts list showing. Fucking sucks, dude.
Okay, I think we need to do this on minds.
Hey, no,
For
well, I
another
want
day, maybe we can get this all figured
another
out.
day, but I gotta get my buddy, this other dude, added to the call, and Wayne's on here too. Are you here, Wayne?
I can hear you guys. Can you hear
Hey
me?
man, welcome back. Nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, I only got 8% on my phone, so I won't be here too long. But
All right.
All right, so now we've got, in addition to one electrical engineer, a second one in the midst.
Wouldn't that be 3?
Yeah, we have 3. That's right. You are also an electrical engineer.
I'm
Well,
a mechanic.
I would say this is fairly one-sided then.
Am I in the wrong
we
place?
got 3 electrical engineers and 1 physicist.
One mechanical.
That is also a good point. I'm an electrical engineer, not a mechanical engineer.
Wayne, what's going on with your experiment?
Not a whole lot. I'm kind of disappointed, actually. Yeah, I was trying again last night, and I didn't see anything happen really. So,
did you play around with the control knobs on the top of the RF emitter? Because I saw you were adjusting it manually.
Yeah,
I've been playing.
You want to show some more
with,
pictures too,
pulse
Mark?
width stuff. I was able to see a little bit of that the thing was emitting the RF energy. I could see a change on the oscilloscope screen, so that confirmed that. Although my oscilloscope is not fast enough to pick up that high frequency, but I can
Now, what is
pick up
the speed of your
harmonic.
scope? I mean, what is the maximum sample rate and the speed?
I got a dinosaur oscilloscope. I think it's probably 40 megahertz or something like that in that
Oh, that's not
neighborhood.
that bad still. I mean, you
So
should be able to pick up anything that you're looking for.
So I just put it on 1 microsecond and I made a little antenna, attach it onto the probe. The antenna is the same wavelength, same wavelength as the waves. It should be.
So you have a pretty high voltage potential at the peak of your antenna, a fairly strong signal.
I was seeing, when I turned the thing on, I was seeing a lot more noise. So there's a definite correlation from turning the switch on and off to seeing something on the screen. So that tells me that something's coming out of that little thing.
I think it's time that you switch to a electronic turn-on device. You know, maybe what kind of voltage are you pumping into that thing?
Oh, it's just it's a 10 volt gun diode.
And you're using a physical or mechanical switch?
I'm using a MOSFET switch.
Oh, so that's strange then that you're getting that type of noise with the MOSFET switch.
Well, it's turning the gun oscillator on and off at about 6 milliseconds on and 6 milliseconds off.
Do you think that the noise might actually be precessional motion within your sample, or do you think that it's just simply electrical noise? I mean, my guess, simply, if you take your sample off of the scale and you run the exact same experiment with the same input with no sample on the scale, do you get the noise?
I think I just get So I was looking at the output from the gun oscillator with an oscilloscope probe, just to see if I could detect anything coming out of there, because I wasn't sure if it was even, putting anything out. So I saw something on the screen. So So it's probably in the it's supposed to be a 9.3 to 9.5 gigahertz oscillator. So it's probably in that range.
How stable is your magnetic field?
It's pretty stable. It goes down kind of steadily because the wires heat up and then the resistance increases. So I need like some kind of a constant current power supply. Yeah, that just adjusts itself.
Yeah, that's what I have. Constant current power supply. It's amazing. It stays like rock solid. What ended up happening at the end was I ran it for about a half an hour and tried all different settings on my signal generator.
Yeah.
And I started seeing some weight loss, but it turned out that it was just convection heating up off of the lower coils. And I put a piece of cardboard in there to stop that. And it stopped that. There was a bit of noise. The change from the convection was way above the noise. You could really see that it was losing weight, but I did not see any weight loss in my experiment. But again, I have no way of testing whether my RF signal generator was actually working and how powerful of an output it was putting out. So I sent it off to a friend of mine who has gigahertz frequency detectors, and it turns out the detector that he has is not good enough for it. He'll have to go to another company in Philadelphia to get one, to borrow one. I found a guy on eBay who's selling one for $1,500 and offered to rent it to me for $150 for a month. So I asked him if I could come over and and make sure that it works. I could just test it there.
I'm sure he was not up for that.
So
I'll give him
it's a great idea.
I really
honestly,
wish that we had...
just meeting somebody else that's a fellow test engineer or anything like that. Like, it's just not too common that somebody's going to end up with a piece of equipment like that. So it's not a crazy idea that maybe you could actually talk to this fellow and go there to test it out if that's what he's into.
So we got to create a Falcon space group on Mines, and get everyone to join us on there, and maybe make Mines the central platform for kind of exchange on this and stuff. If it's really better than Skype, and because I wanted to get this other guy on the call, but he can't seem to join because his Skype doesn't work on his computer or something for his operating system. But it's too bad because he was talking about all these ideas for how to get funding, and he writes grants and gets capital and gets businesses started, and he's super interested in everything we're doing, and he's telling me there's a bunch of people that are also very interested in this, and I know that as a fact because every time we do a podcast and we talk about building a craft and researching anti-gravity and all this crazy stuff, I get so many emails from other people that are like, yo, I'm down, or you should talk to this person, they're talking about the same thing. There's quite a number of people that are starting to take this idea much more seriously, and it's maybe a good time to start a group where we can collaborate and work towards that common goal. I think the 5G experiments would be a good place to start because we need some. You could get a federal grant easy to do some independent safety tests on 5G just to confirm the basic studies that have been done, and then we got ourselves an oscilloscope and some microwave transmitters and a lot of the equipment that we need to do a lot of those experiments just from that. So
Wicked, great idea.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's got me thinking about a lot of different ways to get money and raise funding and capital for this, while doing a service to other parts of science as well. I think that would be a great maybe a great thing to look into. But yeah, we could talk to some people that are really good with and savvy with the business end of things, because I'm not super educated and not experienced on doing that kind of stuff. I did that with Hover Brothers, and it turned out to be a disaster. So I just want to focus on getting the people together and being a lightning rod for this sort of our catalyst.
Oh, that's exactly what you've been, Jeremy. I mean, since we went to AlienCon, you said, I want to take a step back. I want to be the publicist. I want to be the PR guy that pretty much brings everything together. And that's what you're good at. Everybody should concentrate on what they're good at. And that's how we're ultimately going to make this thing happen. So if you're good at soldering, do the soldering. If you're good at doing the online, the publicity stuff, the websites, YouTube Live, you got more people watching this than I have watching my videos. So, this is the place to go. And
yeah, it's amazing that it's only like 71 people watching it live, and I'm so I'm so much more engaged with my audience than other channels of this size and stuff. Like I'm willing to talk to anyone, and having other people come in and I answer. I answer people's problems and stuff. Answer people's questions, and from the live chat, but. It's crazy that these views my videos get like 2,000 views and stuff too, but it's not, I don't know. Do you really think, I know that people I'm like, why is David Wilcox and these other guys, like Corey Good getting so many more views? And then there's also people that question whether those views are generated authentically or if they have all these bots, kind of boosting them up and building them up. But they definitely have a lot more people, and a lot of these channels have tons more people watching this stuff. Again, the subject material that we talk about here, a lot of people, their brain hurts when they sit there and listen to, they watch Alien Scientists. I had one guy in the chat say that, and I hope that's a good thing. I hope it's it's not overwhelming where you're like, this is just too much information that I'll never be able to understand, and I shouldn't I hope that, and then I hope that you're not on the side of the people that oh, this is, I think I know everything about all this stuff already. And if you do, then you should be calling in and educating us. But no one does that, So it's...
Yes, that That is a very common thing.
It does happen
Also,
sometimes. It does happen sometimes. I do occasionally get one guy who's out there that knows a shitload about stuff that calls in and is just like, yes, where have you been my fucking whole life? Like Jeremiah.
Yeah, I wouldn't give me that much credit.
I know. You're good, dude. Nah, you deserve more credit than you think.
I come on and I say what I think, and I'm just trying to be accurate. I mean, my goal in life is to literally be accurate. If nothing else, if I'm opinionated, then I'm failing, but I'm trying my best to
Right.
be as accurate as possible scientifically. I think
No.
it's a good goal, life goal. If you're going to try for anything, I mean, it's not such a bad one to aim for.
being accurate. So after much, I've had tons of friends asking me to watch Stargate because a lot of the stuff that I talk about is stuff that are mentioned in Stargate. So I started watching Stargate.
What, the
over
TV show or the movie?
The TV show.
Oh,
I start, and they talk about anti-gravity once, and you know what they say about it? It's more of inertial mass dampening. It's an inertial mass dampening system.
Yeah, the quantized inertia theory. I love that one. How so quantized inertia. This freaking website rocks. Everyone should go here and start reading these papers too. Because Mike is a genius and he's on to this shit. Just like a lot of other people.
Oh yeah, I'll be back momentarily. Gone for about 2 minutes, so I won't hear you guys until then. But I'll come back, wondering what has been talked about. Back shortly.
Okay. It's nice to know you're all working on figuring this stuff out. Fascinating, trying to get my electrical engineering buddy to watch it. Nice, yes, yeah. Have him check out some of the stuff we're digging up and talking about, especially the gamma ray lasers and induced gamma emissions and coherent perfect absorbers, anti-lasers. Yes, a person that really knows his shit. I know we know a guy. Todd is that guy, and he's in our group our group, and I've been trying to get Todd to come on for friggin' forever.
I think I pissed him off too much with my politics.
Yeah, well, that might be it too. I don't agree with that, politically with everyone in the group. We're all unique people, with our views on a lot of different things, and I hope that doesn't get in the way of the research and what we can potentially offer each other is, in the long run, because
Todd is also not very good with computers. We probably have to set him up.
yeah, that might happens to a lot of people over a certain age, where you miss that wave and it's just too much to catch up on later in life. And
but his papers are spot on. Him and Jeremiah can talk about this stuff on a whole nother level.
Right, that's what I would love to have. I want to take it to that. I want to take it to that next level. You think your brain hurts now? I want to make all.
I'm back, folks. What did I miss?
We were talking about Todd DeCiato and how when
man, his theories, dude, that guy knows what's up.
Oh yeah.
Todd knows what's up.
When Jeremiah has a conversation.
But Wayne, if you do have a guy, man, or a guy, we need more guys to come on this show and really blow our minds. I want to get more and more people that really know their shit to come on here. So definitely got to get Todd on here though. That would be awesome.
Guys, girls, other, I don't care. As long as they know what they're talking about, I want to talk to them.
Yeah, for real. Legit competition. Dude, get off my chat, John Awasasco. Nobody's talking about a link between COVID-19 and 5G. You're in the wrong video, dude. I know you clicked on it because of the name, but yeah, that's cool. Maybe you could listen up and rewind it to the very beginning to where I talked about it.
See, now you screwed up, Jeremy, because you actually said it. And we managed to avoid it the entire video.
I know, right? Geez, I kind of I didn't talk about it specifically that's the disinformation theory, but there it is. That's the disinfo, guys. Is that there's a link between COVID-19 and 5G. That's the disinfo. In case you didn't figure it out already.
Yes, there is absolutely no link, but there might be a link between 5G and anti-gravity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's for
right.
sure.
Well, so yeah, I definitely I'm looking forward to setting up these experiments and getting some more equipment. And if we have to do experiments on 5G to get some funding and research equipment to do some of the other things we want to do, then maybe that's the route we will go. I don't know, but we're definitely getting the. I want to get the minds together and get the gears cranking and get a group going so we can collaborate and get this shit off the ground for real. And
To start that, we need the mines account.
yeah, I got to get back into mine. Well, after I talk to Bill, I'll probably get that figured out. But IQ 172 practically scares me.
Yeah, that
Oh,
it
that's
does.
Wayne's friend. Yeah. So Wayne's got a friend that he's like wicked smart. If he's willing to come on, I know some smart people like that too. But they're like, you know, like I can't talk about this shit like publicly. It's like I'm dangerous. So just like what comes out of my mouth, people that are
Like
that smart and
I'm
know.
ranking in the 140s, but I have nothing on a 170. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, I've met people like that, and it's just like, dude, you name like their knowledge of chemistry and physics are just like beyond, and they just all they do is just try to learn is like to the nth degree, and
If it was linear, it would be different, but knowledge is not linear, and neither is the ability to think clearly. There
no,
comes a point where you cross a barrier, and everything that's in excess of that barrier becomes surplus, and it can be utilized for anything. And I think that most of us probably spend our time sort of on the verge of that barrier, taking care of life issues and various other tasks, and just trying to make it day by day. But some people just, man, they got it, intellectually upstairs, and I would love to become one of those people someday. But right now, I would be intimidated by an IQ 172.
yeah, for real. No,
I wouldn't be intimidated unless I knew that I was right. I would go after anybody. If somebody was preaching something wrong, I don't care about what his IQ is, because ultimately the truth will come out.
Well, I agree with that. I do.
I
Science.
want
That's
to
the
go
great
up
thing about
against.
science. It doesn't care about intellect, and it doesn't even care about what the maximum capabilities of human intellectual prowess are. It's going to be factual, or it's going to be not, and that's what makes it unifying.
I
well,
want
I
to
mean,
have a
look at all the
conversation with
smart people from
myself.
MIT and Caltech that like basically destroyed the cold fusion research and said it didn't exist and held a funeral for it before the results came back. And
I made it. I made it.
Hey, all right, man. Nice to have you in the chat.
Yeah, I just had to re-download Skype, so that took a while because of my slow ancient computer. So yeah,
Well, it sounds like your slow ancient computer is delivering a fairly clear and audible connection.
yeah, it's okay for a 2011 machine.
We can hear you well.
welcome,
Excellent.
welcome on board.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on.
So yeah, we got the right teams together. We're getting the right men together. All we really need now is the funding and a facility to do it, and that's what I'm working on my end.
We already got a facility to do it.
That we do. Falcon Space is set up and ready for these experiments right now.
That's great.
I have a Faraday cage the size of a room. I got high voltage power supplies. I mean, we need more equipment, and we need to fly Jeremiah over here and help me with these experiments hands on. But
I'm working on some stuff right now that I got to bring. I have some gear to bring over that I want to run different experiments in your facility, especially with the Faraday cage. So that's something that's in the hiatus right now and basically waiting for me to generate enough income. The trouble is, I'm in showbiz.
Our new guest, I'd like just to introduce you to the audience. People are like, "Who's this guy? I want to know who he is and what's he talking about." So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
So my name's Skylar. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've made a decision, largely due to the influences of people like Jeremy and many others, to become a technology-centric entrepreneur. So I find obscure technology that's ready for commercialization, lickety split like that. And I commercialize it, and then I sell it to the masses. So I'm doing that with rocket stove type heaters right now. And
Dude,
right
that's
now,
awesome. I love rocket stove tech.
oh yeah, I currently have the only rocket heater that's tested to UL standards, and it will be EPA approved by the end of this year. We have preliminary contracts with Layman's, Ace, Lowe's, bunch of other companies,
Dude, you
and then
guys, that's awesome. Dude,
yes,
that's
and
the
then
most efficient heater technology right now that I've ever read about or ever tried to replicate. Rocket
so
stoves are incredibly efficient. They're amazing.
well. In fact, a big reason why I'm joining this call is because I am in the process of receiving a $2.5 million grant from the United States Department of Energy to integrate thermoelectric module technology into rocket heater technology or rocket stove technology, and to automate rocket stove technology to be able to burn waste wood chips as a fuel source.
That was a huge thing too, and I was also. Let me ask you, while we're on the topic of rocket stoves, what about other waste? What about other hydrocarbon compost? Because the beautiful thing about rocket stove technology is that it burns at such an incredibly high temperature. You can basically vaporize or turn into gaseous burnable medium just about any garbage, waste, or anything else, because they are capable of reaching over 1,000 degrees. So
over
my question
1,000,
would be,
try over 3,000.
over 3,000. Wow, your rocket stove technology that you're currently promoting is capable of over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right now, it's over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's only because of the very small fire chamber. If we double the size of the fire chamber, of course, the volume increases by a factor of 8, so the temperatures go up quite fast from there. Of course, anything past 3,300, and we start running out of refractors that can hold up to that temperature, and then we need electromagnetic confinement and various other things.
Wait, hold on. You gotta I gotta take you a step back. Electromagnetic confinement in a rocket stove? What now?
Yeah. So this is actually technology that I'm going to be working with towards, after the period of performance for the DOE. What I want to do is I want to take Tesla turbines that are electroplated in palladium, which is a catalyst material, and then I'm going to have that set up to a central line shaft with a conventional centrifugal turbine to act as the compressor, and take that JU-shaped combustion chamber and turn it into a solid fuel burning turbojet rocket stove that will turn over a 1,500 kilowatt turbine or a generator off the turbine.
Oh my god. That is awesome.
Well,
oh man, we have to talk again for sure. Absolutely. There are a lot of things that we need to discuss about this topic, and it's pretty clear you.
Well, that's just the rocket heater. That's just small fish compared to what I'm working on next. What I'm working on next will be pulse detonation engines, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. Mark McCandless talk about Project.
Well, and same with Tom Bearden's photos about the longitudinal wave pulse detonation style transmitters. So
correct. And so what I'm going to be using this new rapid prototyping facility for, this is going to be a $1 million facility funded by the Department of Energy. So we're going to have our own built-in miniature electric arc furnace to make our own metal alloys. We're going to have all the machinery, CNC machining, welding, fabbing. We have I'm budgeting $700,000 for the machinery and $1 million to actually construct the facility, and then the rest of it will go to tertiary expenses. The city of I'm not sure if I want to disclose which city.
Yeah,
but
I wouldn't.
There's a college town that has top 10 most prestigious technical universities in the country, is going, hopefully, fingers crossed, going to be giving us about 5 acres of land to construct this facility as part of the 20% requirement for non-federal funding sources. So that's interesting. And then we're going to, once we basically bootstrap this into existence, we're going to transplant operations to a different county with less than 8,000 people, where we can essentially politically control the zeitgeist of the county so nobody can stop us.
Yeah, check in with the chat too, by the way. Checking with the YouTube chat that's going on right now. Martyr for Jesus the Christ has addressed you.
Yeah, they want to put a deposit on the rocket stove.
Well, my website's rocketheater.com. So that's my website. That's got all my contact information, my location. You can go ahead and send me a bomb in the mail if you have the balls to do so. I can't stop you.
Jesus, man. You gotta go there. I'm dying over here. This is a great chat, man. I think this is my favorite transmission that I've done yet.
Yeah, right. This is great. We got to do
Well,
this.
I've been a fan of Jeremy's for a long time, and he's been a hard guy to get a hold of, and understandably so.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to keep emailing me, and I'll eventually be like, okay, all right.
Yeah, man. Once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
Skylar, what's the timeline for all this?
So because the DOE has it broken down, and that I basically have to take up a 36-month period, no less and no more. So the official work period is going to be over 3 years. The first 8 months will basically be first 9 months is an initial verification task, which lasts 3 months, and that's basically sitting on our hands and waiting for the DOE to rubber stamp it officially into budget period 2. Once budget period 2 commences, we're going to be spending the next 6 to 8 months constructing this rapid prototyping facility. It's going to be a little over 5,000 square feet, and then there's going to be a 2,000 square foot renewable energy and science education center, because I'm working with a 501c3 nonprofit organization who's giving a large chunk of commitment towards the project as part of the 20% non-federal funding requirement. And so we're going to be building a 2,000 square foot education facility. That's what I had to negotiate with them. So it's a total of 7,000 square feet of non-flammable, basically bunker-like construction. And it's going to be outfitted, like I said, with all the machinery. You want to talk about Faraday cage? We're going to have 8 inches of reinforced, fiber reinforced, and rebar reinforced concrete blocks with 6 inches of non-flammable, termite rodent-proof foam. And then inside that, we're going to use solid metal sheets for the emissive thermal barrier. So good luck in the skies.
What
So
kind of
anechoic
sheets
and
what
high
kind of sheets
temperature.
of metal are you using?
I'm sorry, what?
What kind of sheets of metal are you using? Copper or aluminum?
So what is going to be to cut cost? I haven't really made an official decision yet, but I was thinking about using aluminized steel, which is basically steel covered in aluminum. But I can get it copper electroplated too if I really want to.
So what we have over here is it's basically a capacitive style Faraday cage. There's 2 layers. There's an inner and an outer. They're both connected to separate grounding rods. The center one is 8 feet down. The outer one is only 4 feet down. And the 2 capacitive layers there's like small capacitors that go in between, in a grid pattern, like every 12 or 18 inches, a square grid throughout the device to dissipate any high frequency radiation that might make it through it. Some of the experiments that I plan on trying involve large amounts of electricity moving through a thyrotron or spark gap from one point to another. We actually have a thyrotron that I picked up on eBay. It's from the Berkeley Labs Linear Accelerator, and this thyrotron helped discover the elements americium and berkelium, which stands for Berkeley, California, where they were discovered by Seaborg in the late 40s or something like that. So anyways, I picked those up. They still work, and I was planning on using them for an experiment involving rapidly charged capacitive plates. I have pretty much everything I need to do this experiment right now, except for manpower, and I have to design the whole thing to put the experiment together. Funnily enough, the capacitor that I found that would supply the energy right now, it's only capable of 613 joules, and 613 is a significant number in Judaism. It's the number of commandments in the Old Testament. So there's interesting things that have been happening with numerology as we went through this through this learning experience. When me and Jeremy went to AlienCon, the booth that we got was 515, which is like an amalgamation of Area 51. So we were the Area 51 of AlienCon.
Palindrome too.
The palindrome. I would have preferred 514 because then we're at Area 51 S4.
So other good news, and I'm not sure, I'm not going to disclose too much on a public stream, but what I can say this much, and I've told Jeremy this before, I have garnered for us very powerful political backing, including retired Majestic.
Holy shit, that's amazing.
Retired Majestic. You gotta
Yes.
be kidding.
No.
How? Never mind. Just ignore that
Don't
question.
worry.
I
Yeah,
don't need to
don't
know
worry
how.
about it.
I just
Yeah,
need to know that.
don't worry about it. That's
I'm
what I
not.
got to say to
I'm
that.
just saying, like, if you got retirement, okay,
Not
very good
only
man.
retired Majestic, but generals that are in charge of over 1,000 nuclear warheads and all of the B-2 bombers.
Because the truth is, if you're lying, it doesn't detriment us, and if you're telling the truth, all it does is benefit us. So all we really have to do is basically get on board with it, because there's really no particular detriment to actually,
I can
putting them forward
later down
direction
the
in
road.
that.
I could provide you screen caps of a
No,
lot of
thank
the.
you. I
What's
mean,
Now,
what's that guy's
privately.
name who's
Yeah,
been on?
privately.
He's been on the drive. He's the drive's done a couple articles on him on the war zone, and he's like the colonel who's been pushing for this stuff to get out. What the heck is his
Philip
name?
J. Corso.
Not Corso. It's a
Cor-
new
Corso
one.
was the one who convinced me
But
that
he's not a
aliens were
colonel.
real.
The
Corso,
Kuntz.
Corso was a turning point in my career. When I read Corso's book,
Wait.
a day after Roswell, I was like, I'm done with this question. It has to be real.
Now
Yeah.
hold up. I'm personal friends with Colonel Coombs.
Colonel Kuntz, right?
Yeah, I'm personal friends with Colonel Coombs.
Oh wow. What's his name? Colonel Kuntz. I thought Kuntz.
We left our paperwork at AlienCon under the table, like all of my notes and all that stuff and all of our equipment, and came back in the morning to see if the Men in Black were actually real. And the paperwork was still there, but you know what was walking around the building? There was a father and son dressed as the Men in Black, and we thought they were really cool because we're wearing these white overall lab coats with the Falcon space logo on it. And here's these Men in Black. They're all black. They got the earpiece and everything. And anyways, we went out to the deck to smoke because weed is legal there. And we ended up hitting up a joint with the Men in Black.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
seen
funny.
that picture, and by the way, that picture was awesome. I was thoroughly entertained by that.
Kenneth
Yeah, that's where
Kuntz.
it came
Is
from.
that his name? Kenneth Kuntz? What's? I'm trying to find the articles on him from the drive so we can post them in the chat. But I remember reading about this guy on the drive and some of the articles that were on there, and this is really really cool stuff. He's definitely one of the people trying to push this out and trying to get like real information out. And like I've always said, it has to come in the form of discovery, not disclosure, because we can't trust anything that's put out. It has to be verified and basically rediscovered. And so
You're misspelling his name. It's Koonce.
okay, yes, I knew I was spelling it wrong. Kuntz.
Tyler, do you have WhatsApp on your phone?
Now he's actually kind of small. In the military world, a colonel is high, but it's really only once you get into the stars. The brigadier general, the major generals, the lieutenant generals, and etc. Does it really matter? But in addition, through Kuntz, I am able to garner the backing of basically a brigadier general and a major general. So, and both of them are adjutant generals for a state I shan't name.
I can't find the article on the drive that was all about him. It was a really cool one, and I can't find anything about it now.
Well,
It's
it's probably been scrubbed by now.
yeah,
Screen caps, screen caps, screen caps.
yeah. Anything that's important, you have to, because it's just like stuff. Just every time I look, it's just like it's gone off the search results on Google. It's gone off this. It's
Yep.
Tyler, can you hear me?
Now, mind you, Colonel Kuntz is no intellectual slouch himself. He's got a 6-year degree in physics, which is what largely drew him towards that very specific side of the military.
Tyler, can you hear me?
I'm sorry. How do you spell his first and last name again?
His first name is Don, D-O-N, Kuntz, Koonce.
Yeah, I've been typing that in.
For the love of God, don't let him know that I sent anyone here. Well, you didn't hear it from me.
Okay. Well, I can't find him anyways. So, anyways, it's not important, but there was some articles on the drive about this guy, and I was wondering if it's the same guy. I don't know if it is because I can't find anything. I searched for him. So,
If Joe Hoop has not picked up my thought by this point and no one else has, then I suppose I will go with the theory of determinism. Off topic, sorry. I'm conducting an experiment over here.
give me a site or a forum to follow up, please. Okay, so those of you who are tuning in late, basically, I went over a whole bunch of stuff about some of the microwave experiments that we were doing with regards to the Alzofon effect, because it's kind of a lower hanging fruit on the list of anti-gravity experiments that we want to really get into and try, and just experiments related to just the research of gravity in itself. But what do you think about my idea? While you're on about using the 5G research, because there's all this. I've been finding a lot of stuff on researching 5G just on the effects of millimeter waves and microwave waves on the human body, and it's showed me a lot about the physiology and the bad frequencies to watch out for and the amplitudes and stuff. So it's good to read just for safety measures in the laboratory, just to know those potential dangers. Even though I don't agree that with the theories that 5G is dangerous or that it's causing coronavirus or any of that disinformation that I believe is put out there to really not really people to get people to reject it before they really do the research and dig in and find stuff like this, because a lot of these reports I'm finding are formerly classified stuff, because it's just all the bad stuff that you can do with frequencies and all the research that's been done into it over the years, which is quite a lot actually. But
Well, yeah, I mean, the same frequency band can be certainly used for illicit purposes, no doubt.
we're
And
also
that's been well demonstrated through
So,
a multitude of patents.
So
Go
the
ahead,
idea
Bob.
was that we were going to write maybe like we were thinking about writing a grant to get money to do the tests on 5G, because we could get some of the equipment that we need to do a lot of these other microwave experiments in order to do a lot of these 5G experiments, which would be relatively easy to do, just to make sure that the results in these reports are consistent with the data that we get.
so the problem with grants is that the grants come in the form of FOAs. Those are funding opportunity announcements. And basically, FOAs, what that entails is essentially it has to be a coincidence of timing, right? Because the federal government basically announces what they want done. And you have to basically provide what they want done. It's not what you want to do, it's what the feds
Yeah,
want to do.
gotcha.
And that's the big thing. So, different departments use different exchanges. So the Department of Energy has their exchange, and even then, there's sub departments within larger departments that have their own exchanges, and they're very, very difficult to access. Very, from a search engine, you basically have to know where to go to find the links and the sources. You have to be a part of to find the links to actually get you to the exchange website. You basically have to be a part of some political pact or something. And the way I was able to do is basically because I'm part of the Alliance for Green Heat. They send out a monthly newsletter via email, which contains, hey, funding opportunity announcement. Click here, and I go click, and it takes me to a website that can't be accessed via browser. And this is basically just a methodology of enforcing that nobody from the middle class can actually get a leg up.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's one of the things I've been noticing, that they're basically like, if you try to get funding for anti-gravity research, you're going to get investigated by the feds, and they're going to shut you down for running a scam or running a fraud and defrauding people out of money, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah,
Absolutely true.
and they would never award you money for doing anti-gravity, or electrogravitic research, right? So hear me out. What we do is we get money for everything else, and we deliver upon it. And it just so conveniently, by coincidence, happens that all the machinery and tools and blah, blah, blah necessary to do these things are also useful for electrogravitics after the project is completed, which is totally legal and above board. So,
This
for
guy is
example,
awesome.
so for
I
example,
absolutely love it. This
Yes.
guy
so,
is awesome.
Yes.
You
so
are
for,
fucking awesome.
Godsend. Thank
Well,
you.
I just wrecked your stream there too, also. So now it's both of our faults.
well, I mean, so I'm kind of an amateur at this. This is actually my first big grant that I'm going for, but I'm fairly confident that I'll be able to get it. And if I don't get it this time, I'll be able to get another one, given the experience that I'm racking up fast. One of the problems with grants is that the only reason why I'm even able to do this is because I'm self-employed via entrepreneurship. If I had a day job, there'd be no fucking way, because they want in a less than a 30-day time frame. If they want in less than a 30-day time frame, a 25-page technical volume, a 10-page slide deck, a 10-page statement of project objectives. They
you know
want
how
a
long
whole.
it took Mark to make his presentation? I mean, he just did a presentation not but a couple of months ago for a group of people, and it took him quite a while to put that presentation together. So obviously, it's quite a bit of work. Come on, Mark, chime in here. Where you at?
Yeah, I mean, I already have my presentation for anti-gravity. I guess if you were to do it here at Falcon Space, here in New Jersey, you could lower costs tremendously, because like there's no rent, there's no building to build. The lab's already set up. All we need is some more equipment, and we're ready to do all of this testing.
That's
But
great.
you heard him, right? You heard him. The end of this program, whatever he's running, he's capable of setting up equipment so that it becomes available for this type of experimentation.
But I'm saying the entire program could happen here in New Jersey if that's not a problem for the grant. It would be saving the federal government money if that's something they're interested in.
So it depends on what kind of research we're doing, but if we're actually going to do electrogravitic research, I would actually recommend we do it in an area where we can essentially have political control. Are you familiar with the Muslim no-go zones that are in Europe? That basically the European governments don't mess with them because it would be too much of a bloodbath and it would be politically not viable to do so. So what we do is we find an area of operation where essentially the entire county is less than 8,000 people, and then we have the political backing from the National Guard of the state and the governor, and then we put our own people in and basically reproduce the PayPal mafia. So we put our own people in these positions to be like the sheriff, the county commissioner, the assessor, the blah, 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 blah. Because with a county of less than 8,000 people, you can politically control the entire county with 100 votes. Because in local elections.
Basically, the key critical thing to take away from this is that location is essential. That choosing a location with a controlled population and implementing influence is basically a huge key to the entire factors that take place in the implementation of the technology.
It's the number one key, because if you don't have that, anything you build will just get torn down by the deep state. So that's what I've been sowing and doing for the last 10 years before even bothering to start building these sorts of things, knowing that they, shut us down unless we have our own boys up to be the sheriff, the commissioner, the everything, and backing from the adjutant general.
I gotta stop here and basically point this out, because this is really important, and this is not something that I've seen talked about on YouTube videos or seen talked about really anywhere else. We haven't had this conversation in WhatsApp or anywhere else.
No, this is
what you're basically saying is that location and being able to influence local politics because of a small population and a small population density gives us the ability to do our experiments without being shut down, without having anybody else from the outside come in. And it's almost entirely as a result of being able to influence the local politics and make sure that regulations do not come in and suddenly change underneath our feet like quicksand.
Correct. And in fact, the area of location that I've picked to operate out of specifically for this whole project, virtually the entire state has no building codes or zoning laws. And I have my eyes set on a few counties, but I have one in particular. And this county has a population of less than 8,000 people. It's one of the most geographically or demographically diffuse populations in the whole country in terms of CONUS outside of Alaska. And in this whole state, I actually have the political backing and alliance of the Adjutant General of the National Guard, and this specific National Guard. I'm going to dox the state to anyone that's attentive, but This specific National Guard has all the B-2 bombers and over 1,000 nuclear weapons at its disposal, because most people don't know this, but the B-2 bomber squadrons are Air National Guard units. They're not federal Title 10 units. They are Title 32 units, and over 1,000 nuclear warheads are also under Title 32. So basically, if this whole state wanted to secede from the Union, they could actually politically do so if they had the willpower by just saying, respect our sovereignty or we'll kill everyone. You choose now for life.
Well, if what he's saying is true, this may very well be the turning point at which we begin to understand the bigger game, because this is all stuff that we've not talked about on this program or this channel before, and I don't think it can be understated how significant it actually is.
Right, because
this is real, political seriousness right here.
Right, because
I don't think this is a real concern. I don't think the deep state is really going to come after us that strongly. I think the time for disclosure has passed already. It happened on December 16th, 2017, when the New York Times published that article about ATIP. I think that's when...
Oh, yeah, Tom DeLonge did it.
So here's the thing. People assume that the deep state is monolithic. That's actually not true. There are competing factions, competing secret societies that have different interests. So on the DC side of things, one of my personal pet projects is a pulse detonation engine with an over 80% thermal efficiency. My business partner and I actually have working prototypes. They do work, and they will get full-size pickup trucks to get over 200 miles to the gallon off any flammable liquid fuel. And we're developing this to basically destroy the oil companies and undermine the Federal Reserve Bank. But the problem is, I could talk about that subject all day long because I know so much about it, but I digress.
I actually have a pickup truck that you could convert for that. I have a hybrid pickup truck.
Nice.
No. So the thing is, you don't want to give any deep state actors that are part of a competing faction a reason to basically use the law against you. So legally, the only pickup trucks that we can convert, at least at first, until this technology is developed and approved, for emissions and whatnot, are vehicles made before 1969 or earlier, because that's when the EPA really started to clamp down. But if you have a vehicle that was made before the EPA exists, you can tell them to fuck off, you do what you want. But if it's made after the EPA was created, suddenly, because it's technically illegal to modify exhaust and emissions and engine systems, dropping in a whole new engine and thermal cracking and all the different types of fuel systems, even though they may or may not mess with you, you don't want to give them a reason. You don't want to give them any more weapons than they already have. And we know that they killed Tom Ogle, they killed Stanley Meyer. They, a man by the name of John.
Yeah, they certainly did with Stan. That was a hell of a story, and Stan certainly had something there. And if you look into what he has publicized, what people are trying to replicate with his fuel cell is not even close to what he had actually posted in patents. He had a tiny tabletop particle accelerator design in patent, which used some kind of charged magnetic particle to accelerate around a closed loop and deliver impulse magnetic fields to his system. It's a really crazy design, and he claimed that he was gaining energy from that system, so it's quite something wild, and he did drive around the country quite a bit.
So there was here's an old one, but it's all about verification, right? And the hyper mileage, the vapor fuel conspiracy is the most well-documented, verified conspiracy ever, because you can pick up D.R. Blackmore's Fuel Economy of the Gasoline Engine. These tests were conducted by thousands of independent engineers, scientists, etc. They were getting 150 miles to the gallon out of a 1947 Studebaker that was not lightened or modified to be more aerodynamic. A man by the name of Henry Unick, who literally wrote one of the original published books on rebuilding 350 short blocks, and he's in I forget which racing Hall of Fame, which division. I think it's Circle Track Hall of Fame. Anyway, Henry Unick's considered by many in the hot rodding community to be the best engine builder to have ever lived. And in the 1980s, he received funding from Pontiac, a division of GM, to redesign the four-cylinder Iron Duke in Fiero. And he was getting 51 miles to the gallon with no electronic control, breaker points ignition, and he doubled the horsepower and doubled the torque of the original engine and got 51 miles to the gallon with no hybrid drives and using a carburetor, but using adiabatic principles recirculating exhaust heat and waste coolant heat. And you can get so much more than that because 4-cylinder poppet valve engines just frankly suck donkey dick, and I have high-speed camera footage to prove that. But they're not constant volume combustion. But I don't want to take this on a different tangent because this is supposed to be anti-gravity related. But basically, the game plan is
it's still related.
No, thermoelectric generators are very related to anti-gravity. You said you got 80% efficient?
No, not thermoelectric. It's an 80% efficient pulse detonation piston engine.
It's a conversion device. It converts a certain type of energy into another type of energy, which in this case we're converting thermal energy into kinetic energy, which can be converted into electric energy. But it's just like the PAP engine. I mean, this is a device which
this is instead
theoretically
of
shouldn't
combustion
work.
engine. It is internal combustion.
No, it is internal combustion. It is an internal combustion piston engine. But it has no poppet valves. It has no camshaft. It has no, timing gears, chains, or belts to brake. It only has 2 moving parts. It's 2 pistons connected to a Scotch yoke. There's no piston side thrust, which is the #1 cause of in-cylinder wear. It can idle as low as 100 RPMs. It can safely spool up to 30,000 RPMs. It produces 1.5
30,000 RPMs, which basically means that your entire timing controls are, or they would have to be.
No, there is no timing. No, there is no
electronic.
Timing.
Well, what I mean is by timing. What I mean is by pulse input of the position and directionality of the crankshaft. You would have a pulse that was timed correctly in order to initiate a sequence of events that would produce your necessary torque for that type of engine, right?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because it's not. There's no fuel injectors and there's no spark plugs.
Right, but what is your actual source of kinetic energy conversion?
It's HCCI, that's homogeneous charge compression ignition. Any detonation that occurs before top dead center isn't a problem because all you've done is you've released that thermal energy. You've released that.
Right, but are we talking about an inert gas that is electronically turned into a plasma, or are we talking about something else here entirely?
It's standard air, intake and exhaust cycles with fuel input with gaseous fuels inputted into the intake plenum, where it is then homogenized and then distributed to the cylinders via the plenum.
What you're talking about?
You're basically turning biomass very quickly into diesel.
No, not biomass. Any liquid hydrocarbons.
But you could do this with any biomass. You could use wood chips. No.
Well, you could, but you'd have to hook it up to a gasogen first.
Yeah, you'd have to heat it up first, right? That's what I was thinking you're doing. That you're throwing everything into the DeLorean's fusion reactor. Basically, you're throwing all your garbage in there. It heats it up, gasifies it, and that goes into the diesel engine, and you're off.
Well, that's a separate technology from the engine that I'm developing. The engine is what is your efficiency. What you're talking about is the fuel preparation system.
Okay, but I feel like we've skipped a step here because there's a big question, and I see it going on in the chat too, so we're not the only ones that are kind of wondering here. What exactly is your energy input source for this engine?
Standard combustible materials, specifically gases.
And are they put into a gasifier type device, or how are they actually utilized?
In the case of liquids, so what it does is we have a high pressure fuel pump that pressurizes it to 1500 psi, heats to 1000 degrees Fahrenheit, where it then phase changes into a supercritical fluid, which is then pushed through a zeolite catalyst matrix, which then breaks down the fluid. So whatever fluid you put in, burnt brake fluid, used motor oil, crude oil, vegetable oil, gasoline, diesel, JPA, used acetone and paint thinner, doesn't matter. Any combustible liquid goes through the zeolite catalyst at high pressures and temperatures and is turned into methane and methane gas-like products, which have 120 octane rating, both raw and non, which means we can run super high compression ratios of 300 to 1. We can run compression ratios of 300 to 1.
I hope you guys got that, because what I just heard was friggin' amazing if it's true. And damn, dude. Damn.
That's basically a retrofitted diesel engine.
It's more than, it's a new cycle though, because all other engines use deflagration. You're taught in all textbooks to avoid detonation, which is called knock, because it destroys engines. So what we do is we just build an engine that doesn't get destroyed by knock.
A diesel engine.
No, diesels do not do not detonate. There's a big difference between deflagration and detonation. Deflagration is subsonic. Diesel engines, their flame front velocities propagate at about 160 feet per second. Gasoline engines, deflagration waves propagate at about 450 feet per second.
Okay, I understand
detonation,
now.
hydrogen detonation propagates at 36,000 feet per second.
Yeah, I've experienced that before. What I'm saying is that your engine will probably be pretty loud.
Not really, because the detonation is contained in the cylinder. Most of the noise that you hear is the exhaust manifold resonating and your valve train moving about. But because we don't have a valve train, and because the connecting rods remain straight at all times to eliminate side thrust, what that means is that there's no secondary forces. So with a 4 or 8 cylinder engine, we're perfectly sinusoidally balanced without any counterweights necessary. And so it's actually going to sound like...
This engine runs smoothly, and it runs quietly, and
Correct.
It runs extraordinarily efficiently.
Yes, and it could be top overhauled in 5 minutes with 1 wrench.
You can power it for 5 minutes with an orange?
No. It could be top overhauled in 5 minutes with 1 wrench.
Oh, well, 1 wrench. Sorry, that would be entirely different.
Yes.
But it would be impressive to power an engine for 5 minutes with an orange.
I mean, I don't want to... I mean, basically my point is that the way we go about this is we have to do this anti-gravity or electrogravitics research. We have to find an area in which we've already, I've already scouted out the area. I already have the political connections laid down where we can basically conduct the research in peace without getting messed with. And we need the internal self-funding to do it. And so essentially what this comes down to is, what this comes down to is that we need to also become largely self-funded. We cannot rely on grants forever because
absolutely.
And so the way we have to become self-funded is we have to establish a reputation of technologists. We have to find technology that's ready to be commercialized sooner. Start making money with that, getting the facilities, the productions, the equipment, the machinery for a production line, and then we can basically, when the shift is over, we can use that machinery for the research and development of new technologies and basically create what I call tech hopping. We start with rocket stoves, then we go to pulse detonation engines so that everyone can get 200 mpg, and then we go from pulse detonation engines to molten salt reactors. I was just at Oak Ridge National Labs molten salt reactor workshop in October of last year, and that technology is ready to go right now as soon as the feds basically get out of our way. And the feds aren't going to get out of our way because of special interests, but that's okay because military reactors are exempt, and we're having the adjutant general basically, we're standing up what's called a state defense force. What that means is that they have all the authority and power of a National Guard, but they're not federally controlled at all. So basically, it's the military of the local state, and then because it's a military reactor, the feds can't do anything about it because according to federal law, military reactors are exempt, and if they want to stop us, we'll set up a pencil beam radar powered by the reactor to burn them alive like in Mars Attacks.
Nice.
Oh, man. This is a good one, isn't it?
Tyler, I think you're a little too afraid of competition coming in and taking you out.
Skylar.
No, this is not competition. This is converging interests, however good conspiracy works.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, this is great.
Well, I mean, if you can't beat the deep state, become another deep state.
Exactly. We could take over
a
small county.
Way to beat the deep state, for real, is to do everything publicly. If you do everything publicly, they can't come after you because information is what they're trying to withhold. And by coming after you, they put an underline on your technology. So what's important is when we're doing experiments on anti-gravity, they need to be live streamed.
Yes and no. Yes and no, and I'll tell you why. If you're doing it publicly, then what they'll do is they'll just run propaganda campaigns to lampoon you. And because, not to sound too elitist here, but yes, the general public is freaking stupid and brainwashed and is basically a little too Untermensch to understand these things anyway. And because people are trained to basically center their ego around tearing other people down, they'll just say, "Oh, well, if the technology works so good, it would already be a thing."
You know, I
So you
wish
know what we do?
I would love nothing more in the world than to disagree with you right now. And I wish, of all things, that I could disagree with you right now. But the fact that I can't, oh man, talk about hitting the nail on the head.
Well, and so
People
basically,
don't
what
want to
we
learn.
yeah, exactly. So basically, what we do is we commercialize more conventional technologies to make the money. We use the proceeds from that money to both establish a reputation and to develop these technologies. And if they say, well, if it was so good, it would be making money. Meanwhile, we have an airline monopoly using flying saucers. And if they
And
say
even though we
that
only have
that
any
technology
people
is
watching this
woo,
chat right now, I mean, at least we have that going on. So
well, I
we
mean,
have
here's the
people here
thing.
that think differently. I mean, we have people here that are listening to this that don't think like that, thank goodness. And it's a real opportunity to kind of air some of the grievances with people that will actually hear them and understand them.
That this is true, yes, but they're very far and few between, and there's just not enough people like us to actually, if we even if we publicize the information, well, when they, shoot us in the back of the head or bomb us and claim it was a meteorite or some shit, then nobody will really think anything of it, and then we're basically going to have to wait another 40 years for a new generation to find our works. And all the prior generations, people like Stanley Meyer and Tom Ogle, you know all these people that have suppressed technology, they didn't have the privilege of the internet to figure out the politics of the matter. Today, we understand how these political machines and these special interests and these monstrosities work. And because we're have this unique opportunity, we could basically position ourselves in such a way that even if they know what we're doing, there's nothing they can do to stop us. And then we just do it. And we don't really need, we don't need to be overly paranoid about keeping everything secret, but we also don't want to be out there, on the top of the mountain, go, see, guys, look what we're doing, because that'll just get all the normies to want to throw us down to masturbate their ego. So what we just do is we develop the technology, we make a shit ton of money off of it. And if somebody says, oh, well, if it was so good, somebody would be making money off of it,
Yeah,
we
Mark,
kick back
don't
and we rest our feet upon our golden footstools, which we made using nuclear transmutation, using the excess neutron economies of our fast spectrum molten chloride reactor. We go, yep.
Oh man, dude, Jeremy is wigging out too. So am I, dude. You've got us both going right now. Seriously, the stuff that you're talking about and like your ability to deliver that information in a coherent, linear, and comprehensive fashion is got us both going right now. I'm telling you right now. I'm watching his expression. I've not seen Jeremy smile like this in a while. So all I can say is congratulations to you, sir, man.
Yeah, dude, this video is gonna get banned hardcore, dude. Share this. People are like, are we still live right now? Like, holy fuck.
We are so live right now.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. People make fun of me and they go, well, if it was possible to get over 200 miles to the gallon, somebody would be making money off of it. And, here's my thing. If I can't sell the technology because it's so good that nobody will believe it anyway, okay, I'll set up just a quick and dirty mechanics shop. I'll modify a bunch of cracker box trucks by yeeting them out of the woods, because 70% of mechanical failures are engine related anyway. Transmissions, brakes, all the other accoutrements, they hardly ever break, and when they do, it's a cheap, fast fix. So I'll just yeet all the old, trucks that are, destined for the scrapyard anyway, and I'll just make a national monopoly on trucking because my cost is so low. And then when they go, oh, that's not fair, you're being monopolistic, what's your secret? Yeah, and we'll say, well, we have these
terrible capitalists feel bad about the decisions that you made, which actually represented the real economic state of various affairs.
Well, then it gets even better, right? So when they say that's not fair, you have to divulge your secret. And then when we divulge our secret, they go, that's woo, that's a conspiracy theory. We'll go, yep.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The way I'm thinking about it, I see it more going like this. We got a working Greg, and we show up on Tucker Carlson on Fox News. We go to all the news media as quickly as possible in one big boom, bring out the technology, show everyone the possibility, and the amount of money being invested at that point into this technology will exceed the GDP of the United States worldwide.
Maybe,
Well, that is
or they'll
definitely
just
true. I
kill.
mean, if it actually came out, if it
Yeah.
came out in full force, if it came out 100%,
If the media
and
could be
everything was
trusted,
suddenly
and if they
revealed,
weren't,
it would completely revolutionize the U.S. economic state, and in fact, the worldwide economic state.
The thing is, you're going to have to bring more than a tabletop experiment. It's going to have to be better than an RC-controlled craft. You're going to have to come out there with a 400-foot diameter craft that's ready to go, demonstrated in front of everybody.
No, you don't. I'm going to disagree with you. And as much as I've loved this conversation, I got to stop you there because I've got to disagree with you there. You do not have to have a fully functional, fully realized, market-ready model in order to get this technology out there. That's definitely not true.
I don't think
You
so.
have to have an experiment that proves the theory beyond any unequivocal doubt. You have to prove it to the point that anybody can look at it, they can see the data, the information, and they know for a fact that your experiment was valid, concrete, and the results are absolute. If you can do that, it doesn't matter if you have a 400-foot craft or if you have a 2-foot craft on your table. If you can prove it absolutely and it can be replicated, you've got something serious and significant.
Like the Sapphire project.
Sapphire project, please do educate me because I am not familiar with it.
Yeah, you mentioned that before. I had it open, so go on. I'm gonna.
So the Sapphire project is a project that was created by Dr. Don Scott and was assisted by Wal Thornhill and a few other people. And basically, these are physicists that do not ascribe to the lambda CDM model. They have their own alternative model that thus far has been more accurate at what we observe in the cosmological universe around us. It's been more accurate at determining, this is all based off of the work of Immanuel Velikovsky that's been, modified and improved over the decades. But what they did was they basically created a miniature sun on Earth using this alternative model, and in a pure hydrogen gas environment, they used virtual cathodes and anodes in a pure hydrogen gas environment to create a miniature sun based off the electric universe model. And despite being in a pure hydrogen gas environment, they were producing actinides and lanthanides and pretty much every other metal you can think of without conventional nuclear transmutation or fusion.
Well, there are so many questions that we could go from here, but
we have no idea how, but basically there's so much shit that we don't know. But Dr. Don Scott and Wal Thornhill are of the opinion that this works by basically creating a Birkeland filament that's zeta pinched directly to the sun and is tapping energy directly from the sun.
Did you say lactanides and anthanides? What were those?
They're two groupings of the periodic table.
Just say them again. Once
actinides and lanthanides.
Those are the two radioactive series. That's like the branch that comes out in the middle of the periodic table.
Yeah,
it's
how you make nukes.
Yeah. It's the two unstable rings, and what is it, the D and F orbitals.
Like
so what about this zeta pinch? And you mentioned that it. I'm trying to Google this stuff.
They're called Birkeland currents.
Birkeland currents, yes.
Yeah, they were discovered by Christian.
Yeah, that's something I've heard of. Let me look that up too, as well.
Yeah, Birkeland currents. Yeah, I had this open before. I'll post it again. Yeah, but I had mentioned if there's a solar storm and you had these things Z-pinched with these Birkeland currents, they would fry the freaking Earth, man.
Yes. Well, in fact, there was a work done, I forget what the engineer's name is off the top of my head, but he basically proved that the only viable way that the craters of the moon could have been formed wasn't through impact, but rather cosmic interplanetary lightning.
I know exactly who you're talking about. And let's see, that would be, who is that guy again?
He was an engineer of all things.
Which makes total sense if you're going to set up an experiment like that, which involves high voltages, electric currents, and surface deterioration due to plasmatic alterations. So yeah, it would make sense.
Well, I mean, so basically what this comes down to is, I've seen this happen so many times before. People do create an experiment. They prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. The media is there to report on it. They die, and the normies don't care.
That's a really good point
that's the
because
problem.
I have looked at the electric
When's the
universe
last time
theories
that
too.
happened? When's the last time that happened?
Stanley Meyer, Tom Ogle, John DeLorean was arrested and trumped up on false drug charges that were dropped all later. Charles Pogue. That's just
What's the latest date? The latest date? Like, was it in the last year or two?
Well, it hasn't been in the last year or two, but again, we can't. I like to go off of historical precedents personally. I would use a model that would work regardless of the
Okay, so
zeitgeist we follow.
let me just stop you for a second. I missed the section where your name was stated, so I feel like I should address you by that. But what's your name?
Sky,
Sky.
not
Okay,
my first
so
choice.
So, Sky, basically what I'm trying to say is I have this theory based on something that Corey Good said in Cosmic Disclosure on Gaia. They took the episode down since then, but basically he claimed that he went to this Super Federation meeting on a spaceship near Saturn, and the Sphere Being Alliance told the Super Federation, which are basically the aliens that do the genetic testing on us, the abduction phenomena, that they need to stop what they're doing. They're put out of commission. They can't work anymore. So abductions should have ended. The date was December 16th, 2017. That's the same day the New York Times published the ATIP article. I think
Anything that's published in a news article is either fully or partially disinformation. Regarding
Yes, I agree.
regarding what these EBEs are, I get my information directly from retired Majestic agents, and I trust no other source.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't
but,
not really
I
all
definitely don't trust
society.
TTSA because the military, like, there's documents saying that they wanted to create a UFO cult and a group to basically control public opinion on everything in the matter and basically control the whole thing, and that's exactly what TTSA is, in my opinion.
And that's how they do this stuff is basically if they don't kill you, they'll just discredit and lampoon you. Are you familiar with a biologist by the name of Dr. Rupert Sheldrake?
That name does sound familiar, but I can't recall exactly what the case was.
Oh boy. So Dr. Rupert Sheldrake is one of the foremost leading biologists in the world. He was the discoverer of axioms, which is the #1 plant hormone. It's basically as important to plants as DNA is to animals, right? Or hemoglobin is to animals specifically.
Axions, hey? AXIONS?
I forget how they
Is
spell
this
it.
the particle, the hypothetical elementary particle?
No. It's a plant hormone. Axioms. It's a plant hormone.
I'm just going to type in axions plant hormones, and we'll see what we find.
Hold up. Let me
Axiom.
It's AX something.
AXIONS. Well, that's how axions is spelled, but maybe the spelling of your particular terminology is different. The big five. We cover 5 major types of plant hormones: auxin, Birkeland. Jesus, I can't even pronounce these words. Anyways, yeah, how phototropisms form.
Yeah, so regardless, Dr. Rupert Sheldrake was well on his way to receiving a Nobel laureate, and he would have without a doubt, but he started questioning the mainstream narrative, and he started questioning axiomatic assumptions that people have, and he started testing these assumptions. He found that the speed of light is not constant in a vacuum.
It certainly isn't. Oh, man, you called that.
Yes, and he actually found that out by basically corroborating old textbooks with textbooks published after the 60s, and then he created what is known as the rubber ruler phenomena, which, we're already familiar that the speed of light is not constant in these circles, so I don't want to delve into that, but he basically found it out through a different methodology of investigation. But Dr. Sheldrake has also created what he calls morphic resonance theory, which he has tested.
Precisely. And now I know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about the guy who went on TED Talks, and he did a conversation on TED that was, I think, fundamentally important, the science delusion, where he highlights one of these particular points where the speed of light is in fact not a constant. It's well known to be not a constant, and we agree on it as a scientific community to say that we're going to say any particular measurement that we get is erroneous, and we will correct it for whatever factor that has been determined by the scientific community, which is erroneous in its very nature. I mean, it's a horrible idea.
And see, that's my concern here is, and I'm open to being wrong, right? I'm open to having my opinions questioned, and I'm open to being wrong. But my concern here is that, just for the sake of argument, regardless of the scale of your experiment, but let's just, for the sake of argument, say that you have a 40-foot diameter, electrogravitic craft that could go toe to toe with anything out of, Area 51 or Antarctica or wherever the fuck they're storing their versions, right?
Right.
Even if you were to go publicly with that, people, you know what most normies on the streets would do? They would turn away and scream and run, because it goes against everything they've been taught and brainwashed in their life. And that's the whole problem, is that anything that is so fundamentally revolutionary breaks people's mind. When X-rays were discovered, I forget what the man's name was, but there was a man that was shown an X-ray of his own feet, with his bones wiggling as he moved, in the 1890s, and he killed himself when he got home that day.
Yeah, it was discovered by Röntgen, German physicist professor William Röntgen. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that name correctly. Experimenting with Lenard tubes, according to Wikipedia.
So, and here's the other thing, right? We know what these craft are likely, what their characteristics are because of Dr. Russell Vernon Clark's analysis on these nano-engineered materials. And these EBEs are effectively, if not literally, post-resource scarce, which basically means all this hoo-ha about invasion and be scared, and it's all bullshit. Post-resource scarce civilizations are beyond war, they're beyond conflict, they're beyond pretty much everything, because their civilization already went mouse utopia, and only those that philosophized their way into a new paradigm were left over to basically ascend to their next stage of evolution. And so I don't buy any hypotheses of malevolency or any of that crap. So if you actually want to break the normie paradigm, we build a functionable craft, we go to the moon or wherever the hell, we find these EBEs, and we see if they'll yeet back down with us or not. And if they do, now what? What's the government going to do?
We take a spin over to the dark side of the moon. We meet something that we are, as a populace, not familiar with. We take back a verification, nothing more, because, of course, no more information will be included other than, hey, guess what, we're not alone, and then where do we go from there?
As far as verification is concerned to the normies, nothing short of literal first contact will be sufficient, and even then I question it. People are more, within our circles, we're very open-minded, but the general public, oh my God, the general public is
they're terrified. They're absolutely terrified.
Not just terrified.
Not just that they're worshiping aliens. I mean, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, these are all aliens interacting with humans.
Yeah, the Black Rock, man. They all walk around Mecca.
Oh man, I can see the chat going up already because said we aren't going to talk about religion.
Yeah. No. Come on. There's already a bunch of religious people in the chat just dying to get this friggin'.
Oh yeah, let's talk about religion. We're doing
no, Mark. You'll be kicked off the call, please.
No. Let me tell you why talking about religion isn't a good idea, because it's not productive.
Yes.
Exactly, and I completely agree with you. I completely agree. That's why we shut it down. We don't disrespect religion. We don't want to discuss the intricacies of religion. If religion has something to offer towards the technology,
I want to discuss progress.
But if it doesn't have something to offer towards the technology, then why are we spending time on it?
Yes.
Especially
It's disinformation. It's distraction.
It's not disinformation, and it does have some information about the technology. At Mount Sinai, Jehovah landed with rockets. And why did he use rocket engines? That's a good question.
I mean,
if you have tech to support it, then that's different. If we're going to read, textual scripture or something like that, but otherwise, I think we should really keep religion pretty much out of this conversation and focus on the technology.
Yes.
The only thing that religion could offer us is basically insights into Dr. Sheldrake's morphic resonance theory, but that's something entirely unrelated to the technology anyway, because even if we have electrogravitics and all the nuclear technology, studying morphic resonance is literally studying the fundamental quantum effects with biology. You know, like we assume that all of our memories are stored in our brain, but Sir Roger
they're not.
Penrose.
I agree with you. I agree with you, and this is definitely
But
one of those areas
but
where
that's my point that
I
I'm
don't
getting
think
at.
religion is the right place to go, though, because you can say
Correct.
spirituality and you can say that we have a connection to something greater, and that's an entirely another topic. And you could research that and even support that with evidence of individual claims, anecdotal or otherwise, throughout the course of history, which we have good scientific evidence towards. That there is something non-local as far as phenomena goes that we can reference to say human brains have the ability to connect with something beyond the physicality of a human brain. But then to go
All
to
brains
the extent of say, there is a entity which consciously controls the universe, I think is a bit far of a step to take. And
according to the retired Majestic worker, or Majestic agents that I know, that's what the EBEs are studying right now.
There is a universal energy field, and we are all a part of it. We're the finite to God's infinity, and us and God are the same thing. And when you take 5-MeO DMT, you can experience it yourself.
I agree with Mark, but again, the words there, for people listening, the words there do not mean what they sound like they mean. You have to understand this is an experiential substance that takes you to a different place, and you can't realistically model what that's like until you've actually been there. So
very good. And also
not mean the same thing as the conventional word God in this circumstance.
What the word God really means in the Bible, and when people talk about it in a non-metaphysical sense, is revered alien.
So what I was trying to get at is that this field of study, this morphic resonance quantum consciousness shit, is what the EBEs are studying, and they've been at it for about at least 100 million years. Let's focus on electrogravitics and better fuel system technology while they're working on that. We're not ready to study that.
I agree.
We don't, because here's the thing: to study that requires nanoengineering, and not just nanoengineering. Are you guys familiar with what's the idea of a neutron computer?
No, we're not. But I'm also not ready to tell you exactly what the fabric of the universe is composed of, or precisely how to engineer it. So, I'm not telling you about God.
Sure. But the point of the matter is that one of the cutting edge technologies that the other civilizations are working on is basically engineering things at the quantum level. Let's focus before we start, and that they're doing that specifically to research, what we would call soul structures or consciousness, but we just call them that due to our severe childish lack of understanding. We're so far away from even being able to touch that with a stick. Our progeny thousands of years from now may be able to touch that, but we have to lay the foundation to achieve type 1 before they can start working on that. And so we have to be effective and productive with our time and our research. And we're just so far away from being able to study consciousness because we lack the technology to actually be able to falsify and verify and test and understand this crap. Let's just focus on getting to type 1 first.
I think
we are 7 billion strong, and we are well on our way there to be in a type 1 civilization. We have the necessary fundamental resources put in place. All we have to do is decide that we actually want to unify as a species, and that we look at ourselves as a species, and we don't look at ourselves as individuals so egocentrically concentrated that we decide who's going to be in power and who's going to get what, but we consider the objective outcome. What will our children get? What will our children's children get? What's after us? What becomes of the human species beyond our egocentrical worldview? And it's a really difficult question to answer, and it's a hard one to actually face in this real-time situation.
Well, the problem is that, like you said, is people are, most people don't give a shit about the future, and there's a very simple way to trick people into caring, because you can't actually convince them. So what we just do is we offer cryonics, and we cryonically freeze everyone and tell them that they'll be brought back to life at a later date, whether or not that's possible. And then that way they'll actually start giving a shit about the future and stop pulling boomerism.
I like your
I like the idea of people thinking about being cryogenically frozen might actually cause them to think about what they would wake up to after they've gone into a cryofreeze for some period of time. You know, what kind of world have they created by indoctrinating or teaching or doing their best for their, when they finally wake up, great grandsons? You know,
Yeah.
what kind of world have they created?
Exactly. So how do you convince selfish, stupid primates to care about the future?
Sex, drugs, I don't know, music, rock and
You,
roll.
you get selfish, stupid primates to care about the future by offering them immortality via cryogenics. Whether or not it's actually possible to bring them back, um, I would ask why would you want to, but
Well,
that's a
if you
separate
only live
subject
80 years,
entirely.
but the 80 years that you live happens to take place over 10,000 years of human speciation, then it's kind of like living forever.
Yeah. Well, the point of the matter is that, I mean, that's another separate project I'd like to pursue down the road. But the point of the matter is we have to be productive. We have to create game plans to actually do these things. And right now, I'm working on getting this grant so we could basically get what I call the boomer bucks, as though we're all born in the blessed years, even though we weren't. And so what we can do is we basically use this money, build the facility, start commercializing the technology, become self-funded, and then basically just build up from there. And the thing is, this grant that I'm working on requires 20% of the funding to come from a tertiary, non-federal funding source. What that means is it can't come from my own checkbook. If it could, I'd just do it that way. But
No, it needs to come from private investors that demonstrate the market viability of this particular
not necessarily
project.
private. No, not necessarily private. It just has
Not
to come
private.
from well, it can be private, but it doesn't
External.
have to be. It has to be external,
basically come from a
non-federal.
non-federal source, right? So basically, any non-federal source, say a company owner, CEO, or whatever that has the ability to invest in the technology, has to feel that it's viable enough for the federal government to finally put their little check mark on the budget waveform so that we can get that money.
Correct.
How about this? What if I, instead of giving money, just invest the equipment that I already have?
Correct. You can do that. And that's one of the things. The DOE is not picky about how this non-federal funding source comes. It can come in the form of equipment, machinery, construction materials, labor, in-kind volunteer hours, or pretty much anything of value that you can prove is of value. And they can do that. Absolutely. And all I really need is the letter. I don't actually need the equipment. I'm not going to enforce it. I just need the letters to get the boomer bucks.
I hear you, man.
Oh,
this is strange.
I can help you out with that.
The chat, you know, I'm reading the chat as we
You got
go
my
along
letter.
here, and
I'm sure we get somebody,
do not
other
get me
people.
started on immortality. I do not want to short circuit your brains. That particular phrase from Esoteric Gold was held for ban and waiting for review from a moderator. Why? What is Google doing with these chats? And why would that message get held for approval? Why?
So one of the interesting things that one of my cohorts is working on. So the biggest challenge with immortality is essentially maintaining the brain. And John Hopkins and Stanford and Harvard and all, I mean, thousands of very credible organizations, including the world's leading medical research centers, have conducted studies with psilocybin mushrooms, which have been banned, but they've actually found that psilocybin promotes neurogenesis and neuroregenesis, so they can actually regrow and not just regrow, but even create new brain cells. You can do that by consuming psilocybin.
Yep,
so you
here
can
we
basically
go. Neuroregenesis via a substance that's been completely outlawed through a ridiculous set of laws under the pretense of the drug wars, originally indoctrinated several decades ago and then re-signed by our most recent liberal president to basically affect everybody who ever wants to try any substance which is either not on the books or is already on the books but is considered influential or potentially dangerous to your societal.
In addition to neuroregenesis, psilocybin and various other substances can even restore neural sheaths and can even undo telomere lengthening. It's immortality.
Hold on. No, you're talking about telomere lengthening. Now we have to go into genetic degradation, DNA degradation, and the ultimate cause of cancer.
It can repair that.
You're claiming that this... No, hold on. I got to step back here. Are you claiming that the substance itself, psilocybin, a known molecular substance with a known molecular assembly, you're saying that that can actually directly enter the body, and either, this is my question for you, does it repair the body either through its mechanism of action internally in the body, or does it actually repair
Yeah.
things as a result of its molecular assembly binding with and interacting with particularly broken DNA chains?
Both.
Or in the brain, is there like a psychological, like because they've shown that there's a lot of misunderstood and not understood science between the connection between your brain and your body, and so it could have effects on your brain that also affect your body just from your
It's-
conscious
I
manipulation.
don't. Here's the thing. I don't know for sure because it's very bleeding edge, and even the top researchers only have hypotheses.
I know.
However, there is something called cellular memory theory, which I think is interesting. Because think about this, right? Your brain is just a collection of nerve cells, right? Well, your body has nerve cells throughout it, all throughout. That's how you're
Yes.
able to sense touch. So, what if your body is actually just part of your brain?
Right. It's like extended nervous system view. I watched a really awesome documentary called recently, The Boy with the Incredible Brain, it's called, and it had Kim Peek in there, the guy who Rain
I've
Man
seen that
is
same
based
one.
on.
Great.
It was amazing, the things that they did a whole bunch of studies on this guy and learning different ways that the brain perceives numbers, because he basically says that he does all these calculations in his head with this
Yeah,
completely
he sees
different
them as
way.
visions. He sees
It's
them as imagery
geometrically.
in
He
front of
sees
him.
it. Yeah, and he can just do like crazy calculations and numbers. He recited pi out to like 1,000,000 decimal places. Yeah,
It's absolutely wild. I mean, the guy is the
So
quintessential definition of an eccentric genius.
yeah,
it sounds
Daniel.
like that sounds like extreme autism to me, which isn't a bad thing because if the extreme male brain theory of autism holds true, then it could be the next stage of human evolution. Not to sound a little edgy there,
Right.
but
No, you're
Yeah,
absolutely
but
right, and
even
that's
if
the
we utilize the people in our society who happen to have a unique ability, and maybe, they're not so societally functional, maybe they don't get along that well in the rest of culture, but they have this incredible ability. We are advanced enough as a species to be able to utilize that person's capabilities, and I think place them in an environment, in a situation where we can optimize on that idea and not criticize them, not put them in a special little box where they have to live a regular life like everybody else and try to conform and use 90% of their reasonable brain power to, fit into the box that everybody else has formed for them. We should be advanced enough to isolate.
Well, we don't have to actually place them in there. They'll segregate themselves. Are you familiar with the works of Terence McKenna?
I am.
Okay, so then you're already aware that culture is not your friend.
Absolutely not.
Well, there you go.
That's precisely the reason for isolation in some cases, and a lot of people struggle with isolation. In fact, I'm sure people reading this chat right now, people that are watching this video, I would say
struggling
probably
with
more
isolation.
so than not, are struggling with isolation. Absolutely.
Well, actually, so as Terence McKenna has said before, we have to find the others, and a lot of the people have gone to places like Discord, where basically we're using this neural network of fiber optics and electricity to find the others, because the problem is what I would describe what we are is we're very individualistic, free-thinking humans, very rare in this current zeitgeist that we find ourselves in. But through the internet, we are able to find the others. And especially now through places like Discord, we can, unlike Facebook or whatever the fuck, we can weed out the normies, carve out our own little niche Discord server, bam, now we're the others. So we are in communication with the others. The problem is that communication can only go so far. So my cohorts and I have already purchased 25 acres in that zone where we have political backing, and we're building up the necessary wealth, capital, and time and labor to basically recreate and reproduce the PayPal Mafia model and basically create a new fraternal faction. And one of the technologies that I like to experiment with, using mason jars of all things and rats just to to develop and perfect the technology, is ectogenesis. Because one of the biggest problems in the current zeitgeist of society is that it's very hard for men to basically procreate unless they're like bajillionaires or some shit. It's very hard for men to actually have families and maintain authority over their children because of the modern family courts.
I don't know. 2 of your 3 fellow interviewers have managed to pull it off.
Well, I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm saying that it's difficult, and with divorce courts and various other things. But if you can create a clone army, now what?
I'll tell you what. I'll be right back in 2 more minutes.
Hold that thought.
I've got to refill this. Oh man.
If you want
I'll
to
be
go
right
into
back.
the biological arena, one thing I would recommend going for is artificial wombs. If you can make an artificial placenta
That's what I'm talking
attachment,
about. That's
Yeah.
what I'm talking. Ectogenesis. That's artificial wombs. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
and ectogenesis, you can use it for abortions that people wanted because they didn't want it in their body. So that's an answer to that, and you can get the pro-lifers to invest in this technology and saying, hey, there's a chance we can save this fetus and prove that this is real. And according to Roe v. Wade, ectogenesis, that technology is what dictates where life and death, where you have control, where you have a choice, and where you don't.
What I want to do is, because it's been proven that you can actually take a skin cell and reverse it into an egg cell. So what I want to do is I want to use basically bigger versions of this. I want to exhume the body of Freeman Dyson and basically selectively breed the next stage of human evolution. And then just create, look, the Muslims are taking over Europe this way. So instead of a birth rate of 7-1, how about a birth rate of arbitrary to 1? Now what?
Now you just got to feed them and pay for the army.
Oh, no. We're working on that too. That's a future project that we don't have the time or money to really investigate with. But think about this. Direct electricity to calorie conversion.
Yeah, that's what the mana was in the desert.
So now we can feed our clone army remotely.
You can feed them with an electric bill.
Yeah. Look, all this technology becomes possible, and people go, people really overestimate the power of the deep state. The deep state is so horrendously inefficient due to how much they compartmentalize, the government inefficiency, bureaucracy, waste, secret this, secret that. But if we're just basically capitalists, we're basically positivists, but we're capitalists, and we don't give a shit what other people think of us, now what?
Oh, jeez. Well, hey, man, it was great talking to you and stuff. Anything else we want to add? Because it's getting to be 1 a.m, and I do have to work tomorrow. So I'm going to get going to bed here soon. And my brain's just starting to hurt now from information overload. So
good luck sleeping. Sorry.
It's good, man. It's good. Anyone who could... This has been probably my best live stream to date ever, with the amount of information we covered in 2.5 hours. It's just this one's for the record books, man. Please, anyone watching, who's still watching, who's made it this far, share this. And this dude's like, fuck work tomorrow, just calling sick with coronavirus, right? Oh man. No, we're gonna have to take this up again and definitely elaborate more on these ideas. This is great, and I like where this is going. And I'm glad to have you joined in on the chat. And
yeah, I would have joined in sooner, but I had to re-download Skype.
No, it's perfectly worth the wait and fine. We're glad you did come through. And man, there's a lot of information here. A lot of stuff to think about. Where are we going as a species? Because this is the big thing. It's like, this is like revelations, man. This is like people waking up to the 2020. It's like, where are we going from here as a species? Where are we going, as a populace? It's like they're already setting up the new world order around us. They're already setting up this 5G, like smart dust control grid and all this technology that we talked about. It's pretty much like it's happening around you. And all the billionaires like Bill Gates and Elon Musk, they're transhumanists and This is
So, I mean, here's my proposed. Where the question is, where do we go? Here's my TLDR version of where we go. It's just me.
yeah.
It's working for the Muslims, so let's just do that, but create the Adeptus Mechanicus version.
All right, I'm back.
Yeah, the Adeptus
I'm sure I
Mechanicus
missed a
version.
lot. Sorry.
So the
I mean,
Adeptus,
yeah.
what would you describe as the Adeptus Mechanic version?
Oh, well, okay, so you're not familiar with Warhammer 40K lore. So basically,
not.
Okay,
No.
so basically the plan is we do what the Muslims do with no-go zones, only where we develop advanced technology and industry, and we use hyper free marketeer to beat them at their own game. And because we have basically a centralized business-centered no-go zone that the entire region's economy is dependent on, they can't take us out because then they'd have a million-man labor riot. And also because the counterattack would be a veritable bloodbath not seen since World War II. So now what?
Yeah, right.
Listen, I don't think you need to go that negative. I think they want us to come out with this stuff. They want to get post-disclosure. And
I
post-disclosure
wouldn't
is...
assume that.
Yeah, I assume that. I assume that because I have many good reasons to assume that. We actually are in contact with another team that claims to already have working anti-gravity technology.
Nice.
I don't know if you're...
Now all we got to do is
That
mass
means he's
produce
not in the WhatsApp chat, and that means he hasn't seen any of the stuff. So you need to get in here.
Yeah, we're
you
gonna.
need to get in the WhatsApp chat. You actually have competition that already did what you're talking about. The Institute
Excellent.
of
Get up in here, man.
The Institute of Exotic Science. They already did it. They
Shoot me a link. Shoot me a link.
No links, man. You got to get in the chat. This is all internal
you
chat
need to get
stuff.
in the chat. Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. Let me try to find that.
Text me
You
your
won't
phone
find
number.
it. You got to go on WhatsApp. Yeah.
Text me your phone number.
Yeah, I got your number, and I'm gonna end the stream right here, and we can keep this chat going as long as you want.
That's a good idea.
All right. So I'm gonna end the live stream. Thanks for tuning in, and we're gonna take this up soon, guys, and I hope anyone watching this or anyone knows who want to send the video to anyone you think might be interested. Have them email me. I want to be I'll be the connector guy to get everyone together. And if people are legit and serious about this, we'll bring a group. We're gonna start a group and bring the right people together.
Martyr for. Anyways, we definitely have been devoted to it the entire time. We've been working on this for now multiple decades, and it may not seem like it's the most forceful or face-forward approach, but we've been working at it for so long now that we've taken a fairly conservative and laid-back approach to it because there's only so much that one person can do in a day. So we are continuing towards the goal, and absolutely we are 100% invested in it in each of our own ways because we have personal motivations to accomplish the outcomes.
And this is real disclosure. I think we did more disclosure in the past 2.5 hours than To the Stars Academy's done in the past 2.5 years.
Yeah, dude, this video was wild.
Well
I can't even
well
believe the
said.
stuff we talked about on this video.
I know, it's fucking insane, dude. All
Oh
right.
man, I can't wait to see what happens in the next 30 minutes after we end this chat.
I know, right?
It's a shame
Now
we
it's gonna get
recorded
real. Now it's gonna get real good. Too bad. We gotta have like a members only, like, and start charging people like, all right, the first hour is free, and then the second hour you gotta like pay for, you know?
So,
Kidding, right?
Sky, what's your number?
Well, I don't have a cell phone, but I do have a
You
landline.
don't have to speak it. Just type it. Definitely don't
have-
say it
Give me
on
a
air.
moment.
Do you have a WhatsApp number?
All right, take care, guys. We're gonna end it right here. See you later.